Okay, we are going to call to order the inaugural North Dakota Missing Indigenous Person Task Force, Thursday, November 13th, 2025, here in the Bernhild Haugland Room, here in good old Bismarck. I'm Lonnie Grabowska. I'm the director of the North Dakota Bureau of Criminal Investigation. I'm going to be sitting in for Drew Wrigley for the time being. Drew will join us shortly. He's at a different event, but as soon as he gets here, I will, of course, yield to the AG to make a few comments. And then if he has to leave again, then I'll just stay on as chairman to make sure we stay on the agenda and keep moving. So we're going to start with Mrs. Kelly Breckel to my left here. Kelly is the one that keeps Steve and I not in prison and missing all of our meetings. So Kelly's going to take roll call for us here. She will list the agency, and if you're representing that agency, I would ask that you please just say you're here in your name. Kelly will check that off. Yes, I'll make that announcement too. And because we are online, folks, when we do speak, please turn on the microphone in front of you, or the folks online cannot hear. Okay, so I will turn it over to Kelly Breckel for roll call.
Okay, so the designee for the Attorney General,
That would be me, Lonnie Grabowska, present.
the designee for the Superintendent of Public Instruction,
Lucy Fredericks here.
okay. The designee for the Bureau of Criminal Investigation,
Yes, that's Steve Harstead, Chief Agent. Thank you.
the designee for the Indian Affairs Commission,
Indian Affairs, Executive Director Brad Hogg.
the designee for the Highway Patrol,
That's me, Jenna Clausen, who writes Lieutenant with Highway Patrol.
thank you. The designee for the Mandan Hidatsa Arikara Nation,
That would be me, Dawn White, Chief of MHA Drug Enforcement.
the designee for the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa,
That would be me, James Dakota, Chairman's Assistant.
the designee for Spirit Lake Nation,
Good afternoon. That would be me, Lana Street, Tribal Chairwoman.
thank you. The designee for Standing Rock Sioux Tribe,
Stephanie Yellowhammer, Standing Rock Tribal Council Representative at Large Judicial Committee Chairwoman.
thank you. The designee for Sisseton Wahpeton Oyat Nation, North Dakota House of Representative designee,
Right, yeah, we can do rock, paper, scissors. Dawson Holly from District 31.
okay, thank you. Thank you.
Representative Jamie Davis, District 9.
Thank you. The designee for the North Dakota Senate Majority,
Senator Richard Marsley, District 9.
thank you.
Senator Chuck Wallen, District 4.
Thank you. And we do have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. First of all, I think we will kick off by running through the highlights of the agenda. If there are questions as we go, please let us know. We will try to be extremely aware of our time frame and sensitivity to folks' schedule. So more than anything, we just thank you for taking the time to be here. This is truly appreciated on this very important topic and task force. So the first, does everybody have a packet? The packet should have in front of you the agenda. Chairwoman, do you need one? Steve has one behind you. I'm surprised Brad was going to share with you, Chairwoman. That's not normally what he does. He had soup in the hallway today. I asked him to feed me and he wouldn't do it. Wouldn't do it. So I don't know. Wonderful. So in that packet is the agenda itself. And then if you go past that 2 pages of agenda, you will see 54-1236, the Missing Indigenous People Task Force, membership duties, collection of data, continuing appropriation, and so forth as passed in this last session. So if it is okay with everybody, we will turn to that page for 54-1236. I'm just going to read through a few of these highlights and then we will get moving on in the direction of each of the required criteria that we need to cover today. So this, of course, the language and the law created the Missing Indigenous People Task Force. The Attorney General or designee shall serve as the chair. And then the task force shall meet at least once each quarter. The membership is A through G, which everybody here is greatly represented, and we truly appreciate that. Subset 4, while respecting the government-to-government relationships between state and each tribe are primary duties, and these are the bullet points on your agenda in the front. So we will walk through all of these. The only thing that was added is under the 2 o'clock timeframe is to get the very start for current federal and state laws that affect the MIP task force to include the Office of Attorney General website, Savannah's Act, et cetera. That was added by the Attorney General as a speaking point as we move through the agenda before we get to the actual points outlined in the law itself. So just to cover those quick, while looking at that, we will identify jurisdictional barriers between federal, state, local, and tribal law enforcement and community agencies. We will identify causes that contribute to missing and murdered Indigenous people to make recommendations to federally recognized tribes in the state to reduce cases of missing and murdered Indigenous people. We will identify strategies to improve interagency communication, cooperation, and collaboration, and remove jurisdictional barriers and increase reporting and investigation of missing Indigenous people. We will administer the Missing Indigenous People Grant Fund, which, if I'm correct, is $250,000. So we will have that as we move through the ideas that come out. Just please keep in mind that that money exists to support the needs of the folks in this room. And consult with the United States Department of Justice Office of Tribal Justice to invite a federal liaison or representative for consultation on the Federal Savannah's Act. Last page, subset 5, that is part of the report that we will be giving back to the legislative management in August 1st of each year. And that breaks down exactly A through I on what we will be reporting on. That is where Kelly's going to come in very vital for us, is to make sure that we're getting that information down correctly. All right. So if we could, folks, we will move back to the agenda where we are going to move on, unless there's any questions from anybody at this point. We will move on to the current federal and state laws and efforts regarding the MIP task force to include North Dakota Office of Attorney General websites, Savannah's Act, and et cetera. And if it is okay with the members of the board, I would ask Steve Harstead to maybe kick that off for us on a few things with Savannah's Act and the website. And then, of course, Jen is here to also talk as we go through some of the other alert processes. So with that, Steve Harstead, I'd like to kick off to you, please.
Thank you. I guess I'll start with Savannah's Act. So Savannah's Act has been implemented by the U.S. Attorney's Office, District of North Dakota, over the last 4 years. I think their first meeting was probably 2022. They have meetings at each of the reservations throughout the state, and those meetings have grown, I would say, exponentially over the last few years. So originally it started out as very much just law enforcement. Now those meetings include EMS, fire, and other groups on every reservation that assist with that. So, and their goal is to just establish the resources and the response for incidents of missing persons on each reservation and increase that communication. So those Savannah's Act meetings, I think, have grown to be very effective. Terry Van Horn is the Savannah's Act coordinator for the District of North Dakota, and he keeps that roster and that list of folks that are available to assist and sort of what sort of resources. So if we need a fixed wing airplane, he knows who. And then. Okay, sorry. Okay, so he knows who to call and get those types of resources, and so he's a wealth of knowledge as it relates to finding those missing persons and getting those resources and the proper resources available and responsive. So That would be a little bit of an overview of Savannah's Act. Is there any questions that I can answer before I would move on to maybe the next topic there? I see none. So I will move on to the,
Are there any minutes from those meetings?
I believe there are, Terry Van Horn would have them. Again, it's a US Attorney's Office meeting, so they would do that. But I think Terry would have those, and we certainly can reach out with and check with him on that.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question related to the Savannah's Act and, the resources that it provides back to tribal nations when we report somebody missing. Has there been any discussion on funding for any of the tribes or tribal nations in terms of resources when executing those resources? Also, the NCIC system, we still have issues with our system at home and inaccurate information being placed into the system. And has there been any discussion on training or anything to support that effort?
Yes, so when you're asking about funding to tribes related, are you referring to state funding, or would that be federal funding through Savannah's Act?
State funding as well.
Okay. That would be something that I think that this task force would discuss, or a legislative solution there would be the next thing, I believe, for, but there is, let's not forget the $250,000 in this task force for missing persons that this task force as a group has control over. So there is some funding there, as a state source, at this time.
So we just haven't defined or how we
Right.
gain access.
This is the first meeting, so this group gets to decide how that money is used. And then the second part of your question was related to NCIC. And so us as the Bureau of Criminal Investigation, we have a couple of people who are trainers on that, and they're the ones that are charged with, activating accounts, deactivating accounts, setting up passwords and doing those types of things in that NCIC system for local agencies. And so those folks are available to you at any time to do the training to help you get your people the ability to go in there and add and remove and properly use the NCIC system for all sorts of things, including missing persons, right?
So is that something that has to come through a request form? Or is this something that's just provided?
Just provided, so it'd be a simple phone call to our office to request the training for your, your emergency managers or whomever you would need trained up on that.
If I could, Chairwoman, when it relates to Savannah's Act, what we probably should do is get Mr. Terry Van Horn at our next meeting. So maybe help explain that a little bit. He would be the kind of comptroller for that and the organizer for those. So if the committee or if the task force is comfortable with that, we would like to invite him to the next meeting or one of his representatives, and then he can probably share a bit of that federal update for you. Yes, ma'am, question.
Yes, so I've been on our this is my third year going into being on our tribal council, so I've attended the last two Savannah Act meetings that were held. They're usually in July every year at our local casino, and there's some really good resources that are available with DOJ when it comes to missing and missing Indigenous people. However, I would like to know like how coming into the meetings is, how many tribes actually have like a missing persons code or a tribal response plan, tribal community response plan, or something in place already, so that you know that you're getting some type of evaluation piece from these meetings. So when we had this last Savannah's Act meeting here this past July, we had three tribal members on our reservation go missing. Um, as you know, our reservation straddles two borders, North and South Dakota. So, you know, we had an individual go missing on the South Dakota side, and we didn't have anything in place in regards to emergency response, emergency management, anything. You know, a lot of it is grassroots, so there's not a lot of coordination and whatnot, mapping of areas, you know, making sure that if you find something, potential criminal activity or whatnot. So we're actually having the Fox Valley with the National Crime Justice Training Center come down on November 19th to help us in developing a tribal community response plan. That was something I was pushing with our previous tribal administration, but it just kind of fell on deaf ears. So that's something that I have tapped into and we're working on. But I would just, maybe that's a recommendation when these meetings are held with tribes, is ask what they have, ask what they currently have in place. How can we help you develop something for your tribe? You know, I take a lot of these Savannah's Act meetings as just more of a informative kind of gripe question type meeting. So, I mean, that's just something that I want to stress that Standing Rock has doing in regards to, you know, that resource, those resources that are available to us. So, and then of course we have our tribal member that's still missing, Renzo, up here as well. So, um, you know, it wouldn't just entail missing, it's runaway children, you know, all of this other when people go missing. So though I just wanted to share that's something that I'm really excited for Standing Rock, especially with the winter months approaching. You know, we have the snow, the inclement weather, sub-zero temps and all of that. So we have a lot of our unhoused relatives, so that makes it like really, really difficult. The last gentleman that was found on our reservation actually left our local Indian Health Service and was found maybe not even a quarter of a mile down the river, but you know, there was nothing in place for him, you know, if whether it was obviously he had some head trauma, TBI, and some addiction issues, so that really impacted, you know, a lot of it. So I just wanted to share what Standing Rock has coming, and I'm really excited about it. I think I just sent out the email to some of you that did get it. So if you can make it, you can see that's a resource in action, you know, that could be available for other tribes. I know some tribes already have things in place, but we at Standing Rock don't, so.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Yes, we also received that invitation and we'll have personnel there for that too. And we'll also pass that same information on the request on to Terry Van Horn and see if we can get him or his personnel here for the next meeting. I think that'd be helpful. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Representative.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman Yellowhammer, for that. I also want to echo that. Since being in this space, you know, that's one thing that I've heard time and time again is the Savannah's Act. And yet when things actually go down, um, it's kind of an afterthought. So I'm really curious as to what the Savannah's Act can do for our tribes in the moment it's happening, and how. So if Terry Van Horn, or representative, comes, I'd really like to see, like, who do you call when things happen? Who's that person that you call that's going to answer the phone? For me, I call the state, and the state gets through to Savannah's Act somehow, some way. But that's threefold. You know, if Lana calls me or somebody from Spirit Lake calls me, then I call you, and then you call. it shouldn't have to be that. So that's why I feel like this needs to happen, this task force, because it should just be from the, the chair or whoever it is to, Savannah or whoever at the state. So I'd really like to have that information if and when they come, or if they're not able to attend, at least we can request that information. And then, two, along the lines of what Chairwoman Jackson Street had mentioned about the information about the missing Indigenous people, I have been the simplest thing of our state website that has and I check it every Monday. Unfortunately, it's usually added more people and some people are taken off, thankfully, but I check it every Monday to see what's going on. And what bothers me the most is there's rarely ever any photos on this website. And there's people that have been on here for years. And I talk to our tribes, I talk to the agencies, there's no place for us to put it. Then I talk to the state, yes, there is. You just need to click this place and that. And I'm like, can you talk to each other? Can you get these? Because there's really no point, to me, it's almost pointless to have this up with no photo. Because you want to be, oh, girl that went missing is 5'8", dark hair, dark eyes, tan, okay, that's all of us, a lot of us on the reservation. So I think really having that information, and I don't know what's missing there. How can we get this updated to have the photos available? And where does that begin? And if that's on the agency side, let's fix that. I've been told time and time again that it's right there. All you have to do is upload it. But then when I ask them, they're like, there's no place to click this. There is a place, but you can't click it. It's not available to us. So just those two things as we're on that topic. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll have Steve answer a few of those questions about the website. And also during those Savannah's Acts meetings, Terry has offered personally at each of the ones we've been at, which was each of the tribal nations. We didn't go to Sisseton though. I don't think I was on that one. But he is the initial point of contact, and he shared his number with everybody at those meetings to say, please call him directly on the Savannah's Act side. But having Terry here again to affirm that's probably a great idea. So Steve, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yes, on the missing persons website, the data within the missing persons website is strictly taken from the National Center, our National Crime Information Center, NCIC, which we've just been talking about. That's where that website data comes from, 100%. So BCI isn't entering it. Nobody in this, you know what I mean? Like, so that's not us manipulating the data. It's coming directly from NCIC. And so as law enforcement, once a missing person is reported to us, we are required as law enforcement to enter it into NCIC. That's always been that way. And so that's the most reliable source of data that we can get. And so that's why we use NCIC. But also as law enforcement, we need to enter that photo in there. And so as the agency that enters one of these missing people, like we'll just use the top line that's available up there, Joel Amundsen. His information was entered by the investigating agency, which is McKinsey County Sheriff's Office, and their phone number is listed there. That is who needs to enter that photo. They have to go to the NCIC system and enter it in their NCIC. So we don't want to tell them you have to put this on the missing persons website because there's no way to do that. We have to tell them you must put it in NCIC, and NCIC then relays it to us. Now, there are times we have technical issues and that website doesn't get updated properly. So that does happen. In those instances, if they say I entered the photo and it's still not on the website, then let us know, because there's obviously a technical issue that's blocking us for some reason, for whatever, right? But in this case, we have to be clear to say update NCIC with the photo, and that updates the website. I hope that's as clear as I can make it. I've explained it probably several times along the way, so I'm trying to be as clear as I can with it, but it is that reporting agency that must enter the data. And we have, again, several people who are charged with taking care of, North Dakota's entries into NCIC. NCIC is a FBI system. It's not our system. And so, but our people activate the accounts and set people up and get people on there and train them on how to use it. One of our people has also been reaching out to each of these agencies saying, what, do you have a photo yet? Do you have a photo yet? So as more people come on here, she is following up with them to say, please enter a photo, please enter a photo. And so it doesn't happen every day. And then, you know, she might check in weekly with them or monthly with them to get that new photo once it's been on here for a little while. So that's sort of our system for how that's doing. We are trying to follow up with those agencies and get those photos in there. And again, same people are the ones that can teach them how to put the photo in there at the same time. So if they say, I don't know how to put it there, we can walk them through it.
Thank you. So just for clarification, you have the technical support to help them with, because in Belcourt specifically, if you go to the last page, Isaac Hunt, we see his picture all over the place, but this website. And so to me, that just, and I've been on this asking and playing phone tag with everybody. And yet he went missing over a year ago in March of 2024, and his picture is still not up. And so it's BIA agency, which is my home agency. And that also I need clarification on that. That's Turtle Mountain agency, but he went missing outside of that agency. So I'm just curious as to how that works as well, like why the agency, from my understanding, he went missing in the Spirit Lake Nation. But yet the agency is BIA Turtle Mountain agency. So I'm a little bit curious as to why that difference, and then also still why there's not a picture up of him. Thank you.
Yes, so my understanding, just from a whisper from Jenna at the time, is that somebody was detailed there at the time, and that's who entered Mr. Hunt. And so, but that same agency, the BIA Turtle Mountain agency, should be able to update that record, not just the person who entered it, but anybody within that agency should be able to update that record. But yes, it has to be somebody from the BIA Turtle Mountain agency that makes that change and gets that picture and puts it in NCIC.
So could we get somebody at the Turtle Mountain agency or to the Turtle Mountain agency to help them get that button so we can click and add the photos?
Yeah, if, matter of fact, offline, if you want to give me a contact or somebody, I will have our person reach directly to them
Great.
and walk them through getting that done.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question. So
ahead.
back to Isaac's notice up here, and thank you, Jamie, for pointing that out. I know we did meet last week with the Highway Patrol and we had the same discussion. My concern is still goes back to the investigating agency, so it kind of presents itself falsely when it says BIA Turtle Mountain Agency from the perspective that is he missing from Turtle Mountain? You know, he's not, he's missing from Spirit Lake Tribe. And that's probably one thing that we talked about, but, you know, didn't address it in the manner that I am today. So I think when they're putting that information in, it needs to identify from where he went missing. That would be my ask. And also follow up with the photo. And I know we did have a discussion on the photo, and, you know, that kind of led us down another path, maybe doing an MOU with some of our enrollment with our enrollment offices to maybe provide a photo should there not, you know, be a photo eligible at the time. So that's something we'll continue to work with the Highway Patrol with.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we talked about this, you're right, last week a little bit. In Mr. Hunt's case, would you prefer to see him re-entered with the proper agency? So we can't control what NCIC has in their database. So if they don't have a location from where he went missing versus the investigating agency, then we can't change that. We can only display the data that they give us. But if you want him taken out and put back in with Spirit Lake, we can certainly accommodate something like that. If that would, and then maybe get that picture done at the same time, hopefully.
Well, I think it needs to be, presented, how it is factual. He's missing from Spirit Lake. He still currently doesn't have a photo. In March of 2026, it'll be 2 years, and so he lacks a photo. And so who is the individual who is responsible for reaching out to tribes to obtain the photo, or to request that the photo be entered, or provide that training as to how the photo goes back into the system?
Yeah, again, that is somebody from BCI that and Rita from our office is the one who reaches out and follows up to try and get that photograph entered into NCIC. And she has like a one-page instruction sheet on exactly how to do it, all laid out. She does a great job with it, and she's willing to walk people through it. It's just a matter of getting a hold of the right person and getting the information in there that you want entered.
Okay, and so did you say that she had attempted to get a hold of somebody at Spirit Lake Agency?
So in Mr. Hunt's case, she would have been reaching out to the Turtle Mountain Agency because that's who's entered the data. So that's who she's been reaching out to.
And so there again, there's a problem because they wouldn't have a photo of him at Turtle Mountain. That photo would come from the Spirit Lake Nation Agency.
Can tribal affiliation be added to that? Because in looking at some of the other names on the list, there's a 16-year-old that Yellow Horse with the last name, which is not common name on our reservation, but yet our BIA OGAS Standing Rock Agency was the investigating agency. So if that is known, then hey, this person is from Cheyenne River, Turtle Mountain, Spirit Lake, or whatever, then we could send that information to those tribes as well to help get that word out, because we do have a lot of other tribal members that do reside on our reservation, and that sounds like that might be the case here with Mr. Hunt. So in looking at this, a 16-year-old, and he was went missing on September 30th, last seen. So if we had the tribal affiliation from whoever may have known where he came from, it would help us also reach out to our other tribes, our sister tribes, to help locate these relatives as well.
Okay, thank you. We'll do what we can. So again, it's FBI's data in the NCIC system, and we're simply just displaying it. And so whatever they allow to be entered into NCIC, and I don't have all of the data points in front of me that they allow, but that would be what the control on that is, whatever the FBI in the national system allows to be entered. And I don't know that off the top of my head as to what points are in there.
So it probably just asks whether they're American Indian, Alaska Native, Caucasian. So it's just that's checked. There's not other tribal affiliation that could be added to that.
Right. And again, we have no control over that. This is a FBI national system that we're just displaying data from. So that's a
There
limitation.
we go,
Yeah.
right there. Let's work on getting that added.
Mr. Chairman or Sir or Chairman?
Representative Davis.
Thank you. Is that, I'm still somewhat new to all of this. Is that something a task force can do, is make a recommendation or something to the FBI? Because obviously this is a bigger issue than just in North Dakota of missing Indigenous people. So, to help with that across the nation, I think that would be something. Is that something a task force can do to say, hey, we're working on this here in North Dakota. We'd really like to see this across the nation. Is this something you can add? Is that
We can absolutely do that. We can reach out to NCIC through our staff at BCI and see what they have in the system. Is that
Yeah.
possible and so forth? Yes, we can definitely make those connections and bring that information back to the task force. But yes, those recommendations are something we can definitely take to them.
great? Thank you.
Absolutely. I think we'll, just for a moment, we're going to pause. The Attorney General, Drew Wrigley's here. I'll just turn off the microphone here, let him activate his, and have some words for the task force.
I'll be
Attorney
brief.
General.
I appreciate that opportunity. My apologies for being late, getting back from the, I was at a luncheon that I had to be at over at BSC, and they were giving me an award, and I felt if I wasn't there, that would have been bad form. So I was there for that. But it's good to be with all of you, and it's good to see all of you here. I just scratched down a couple of things I wanted to share. I want to first, I want to compliment Representative Davis, both for your work on this, but also to your point, I really think is the central matter. You're talking about this is a task force, but you've already come up with several practical things. Several of you have practical things that will be helpful. And I'm very passionate about that in my office. Anybody knows when we meet about things, I'm not patient about that, and we shouldn't be. We shouldn't be patient about everything. These are law enforcement issues. I've been in law enforcement for 30 years. Both as a state prosecutor and as a federal prosecutor, and then now as the attorney general. And we can't afford to be really patient sometimes. So I appreciate that. And we want a task force like this can be a fantastic clearinghouse for figuring out what are the itches and how do we scratch them. Sometimes the answer is we can't. Sometimes it's that the FBI won't do that. But you know what? Yeah, we can make recommendations. Why wouldn't we? We can put it on, letterhead of the state of North Dakota, and we can send those to people. I mean, they want to help. So I love that. I can already tell that there's going to be a lot of practical discussions about things that are taking place, and let's say super focused on that kind of thing. Practical solutions that will facilitate law enforcement. Because I can tell you, we all want to do the very best job that we can. In my first weeks as Attorney General, I was happy to have the opportunity to travel up to Spirit Lake, where we signed the first of what became a series of MOUs between the state of North Dakota and our tribal nations, establishing task forces on and around our tribal reservations. The legislature was kind enough to give us additional resources. I got additional BCI agents to station out on the periphery right by the reservation, engage with the sheriff's departments, the police departments out there, tribal law enforcement. And because I know from my 10 years as U.S. attorney, it's always understaffed. I met with then Chairwoman Kavanaugh. I'll never forget it. She told me, as U.S. attorney, she said, Drew, we have one patrol officer. I said, one per shift or what? What do you, one, Drew, one. I mean, I know enough about law enforcement after 3 decades of working in and around this stuff. That doesn't do the trick. BIA is always they're always understaffed. We've got great folks who work for BIA, not enough of them. 24%, if that were the situation in Bismarck, everybody would be going crazy, right? They'd be going crazy. But on a reservation, it's enough that if we have one call and that one patrol officer, he or she goes out there and now everything else is, that doesn't work. So our legislature came through strong for us in my first session and gave us an additional agent, a BCI agent for each of the reservations. And then we got task forces that were building up and around there. That was the same kind of thing, scratching an itch, impatiently saying, all right, we're not waiting around for this forever. Federal government's not going to do it, I guess. State of North Dakota will do that. And that's going to be really super beneficial. I know that HP has been signing MOUs also, trying to fill those gaps. So thank you for, let's all join in agitating for change where things make it seamless. We're all brothers and sisters. We've got tribal lands and territories and everything else. We're all here. We're all here in this shared geography. Crime doesn't stop any of these boundaries, county or otherwise. So I feel passionately about it. I thank you for the dialogue in Spirit Lake last week, Madam Chair. We appreciated being up there. I was happy to be able to travel up with the governor, and then our lunch discussion in particular. You brought up the issue of jurisdictional matters and sentencing matters for tribal members versus where they go to federal court or they go into state court. Big difference. I know both of them. Some of it driven by federal law. But what agreement, what can we all do to facilitate criminal justice in the state of North Dakota without reference to the color of people's skin? Another thing I feel very passionately about. I'm very blunt about these things. I've been fighting for underserved challenging communities since my first day as a prosecutor. I'm a lifelong North Dakotan, but I left for a short while when I was a prosecutor in Philly. I learned an important lesson my first weeks in the DA's office in Philly, one of the nation's most violent communities. In my first weeks, I figured out really quick. The worst neighborhoods in America, and then some of them are in Philadelphia, they're way more law-abiding people than not. It's not even close. Way more. The vast majority of folks, their only crime was they didn't have the money to get out of what they call the Badlands in Philly. In this, with regard to our tribal lands, it's different. It's like, this is home. So home has to be safe. And we share this geography. We share our cultures. We share it all. And we share the responsibility for law enforcement without reference to the color of people's skin, tribal affiliation, or enrolled status or not. We're in this together. But the challenges sometimes they're not as readily apparent. I say spend most of my life in North Dakota. Before I became U.S. Attorney, I hadn't spent a lot of time on our reservation lands. I just hadn't. One of my assistant U.S. attorneys at the time, Jan Morley, took me on a tour the first couple of weeks when I was U.S. Attorney. We drove around to each of the reservations, and there was a lot of learning on the reservation. But then driving between, if you know Jan, I was getting it all. It was great. I appreciated it and still do. So I won't take a bunch of your time with that, but to say this is a shared commitment that we have. We've stepped forward on that matter. Tried our best in the Attorney General's office by getting additional resources through our BCI. Working on communication so critical, and never hesitate to say, we have an itch that needs to be scratched because we're missing some opportunity to enforce the laws to protect people in some corners in our state, and we don't want to do that. So I'll end with that. I'm gonna, and in each of these meetings as they come along, I'm honored that the legislature has made me the chair. They decided I don't have enough to do. They said he's not busy. But this is what I'm busy doing. I'm busy doing stuff like this. So I'm going to be here every single time that I can be. When I can't be, we'll have our capable folks here with BCI. But if I have to miss a meeting, I can't be there. It doesn't mean that if there's something coming up, you want to hear from me personally. We work together. I'm a combative and I can be an abrasive person. I hear it all the time from my friends in the legislature. But I'm also accessible, and I'll sit down with anybody to talk about anything. So please, if I can't be at a particular meeting, that's almost beside the point because you can reach me anytime, and we can talk about a host of issues. So I think there's a lot of good that can come out of these things. Sometimes people get upset. We're having conversations about feather alerts, and people say, "Well, why a feather alert? Well, what about Chinese Americans? Why not Hispanics? Can we have a different alert?" We're scratching an itch. It's an issue. I've worked 10 years as U.S. Attorney. I understand some of it is a communication piece. Some of it is a host of different things, but the legislature has made a judgment about this as a body, and we're gonna see that there's as much benefit as can come out of these matters. No, not because Native Americans are more important, so they get their own alert system. That's not the point. It's that they're saying the legislative body was convinced there's something that's not being met here. We're going to do something about it. We're in the Army, and we are here to carry out those objectives. All right, so if you have got a really big complaint, that's Lonnie. You call Lonnie. No. I said when I got there, and after a few months, people got it. I've been there 4 years, almost 4 years now. You never stop short of coming down to my office ever. I said, I get paid too much money to just hear good news. I'm here to hear difficult things and what I'm doing right or wrong, or what you need me to work on or whatever. I want to hear those things directly. I'm not the good news department. I joke about being the good news department. Trust me, nobody brings me good news. But we're here to work on challenging news and challenging issues. And I like the discussion. I got in here a little bit late for it, but I like the discussion of like, hey, wait, this is a problem. Can we cure that? If we can't, can we send a suggestion that maybe somebody would work on that? So thank you very much for being here, everybody, and for the work that you're all doing.
Thank you, Drew. Appreciate that very much. I will apologize, folks. I forgot to give the opportunity to some of the folks we did not do roll call with to introduce themselves. So there's some folks in the back. If we could just have you say who you are and where you're from, and then also a few folks at the table that didn't get the nameplate right away. So, ma'am, if you wouldn't mind in the back there, just stand up and tell us who you are. Sorry to put you on the spot there. Appreciate it. Great. Welcome. Welcome. Wonderful. Thank you. Welcome. Well, congratulations. Welcome. We appreciate you guys. And Melinda, I'm sorry we didn't do so please just introduce yourself. Wonderful. We appreciate that. Thank you. Mercy. Wonderful. Welcome. Representative.
Hi, Representative Colette Brown for District 9.
Okay. And ma'am.
There we go. My name is Sashay Shetler. I go by Sassy though, so feel free to call me that. I serve as the Assistant Director for Indigenous and Multicultural Education in the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction.
Wonderful. Thank you all. And I apologize for not doing that earlier. We will, if it's okay with the task force, we'll move on to the 2:20 p.m. Bullet, just so we can keep the conversation moving in that direction. That would be the review and discussion of the identification of jurisdictional barriers between federal, state, local, and tribal law enforcement and community agencies. So we'd open it up to conversation by anybody here.
Don White, Chief of MHA Drug Enforcement. I'm 17 years in on being a tribal law enforcement officer for Fort Berthold. One of the things is that I see when before Savannah Act even came about, the biggest, when you don't have a plan, when you don't know who's in charge, is it the primary law enforcement agency? Is it BIA? Is it FBI? That's the discussion that we had initially. Then we developed a plan. We developed an emergency committee. We developed any type of emergency plan to include our missing people. That's your first step in any reservation. And just to let you know, we do have those plans in place. Emily Sitting Bear, she is our point of contact for our emergency operations community that we have on Fort Berthold. She's available. We have monthly trainings for tracking, for the resources that are out there. Some of them are free, some of them, yes, you do, but she does offer them. And she does offer how a plan is to be in place for your reservation. It may not work for yours, it may work it. You have to, I look at failures as a learning tool. It didn't work this time, readjust, change it up. Okay, now what can we do? Another issue that The jurisdiction part of it. Criminals don't know jurisdiction. Okay? Even as normal people here, we do not know what the jurisdiction lines are. Law enforcement, yes, we do. Okay? Yes, we do. It is a gray area sometimes, but we work through it. And that's where establishing MOUs come in place. That is where establishing partnerships, if it's a gentleman handshake. Fort Berthold is unique because we are 6 counties. That's 6 sheriffs, that's 6 state's attorneys that we have to deal with. And there's 6, it's just like herding cats. And we have to work through it. We have to adjust. We have to make do with what we have. Another thing is getting your resources together, knowing what you have as a nation, knowing who can provide it. Even your regular people. Anytime someone went missing on the lake, that lake is huge on Fort Berthold. Okay, Lake Sakakawea. We have people from all over that offer their boats. It's just, and having that point of contact to say, okay, what's our resources? You're gonna do resources. You're gonna do, having those people in place. Um, Now that we have those, one of the biggest things that I feel is in Indian country, especially, getting that information out. What has worked for us is the iPause. That is phenomenal. Getting that information out quickly on on the cell phone to everybody, um, that has exceptional for us. Um, we just, had a stolen vehicle and a missing child in that vehicle. We got that child back within an hour. It's getting the information out. And yes, I know law enforcement on certain reservations, yes, there's only 2 on, you know, but when you have other entities out there that are willing to help, emergency response teams, that's another thing that needs to be developed, an emergency response team. People that are going to be committed to do it. It's that commitment to want to go look, go see. And we are still struggling with media, um, putting it out in the papers, putting it out on social medias. What do we do? Um, Also, one of Terry's things is he does not like the word runaways. Okay, every person that you cannot find them, as he says, is a missing person. So also too, as people, we need to stop with saying, "Oh, that's just a runaway. They're this, they're that," and and put what it really is, a missing person. If we're gonna do this and be committed to it, we gotta say what it is, and you gotta go look for them. Um, that's one of the things that I know we still struggle is the media presence in papers and that, because nobody wants to hear bad news, but also uh, another thing we struggle with is families really don't want to report, not immediate families. It'll be a friend, it'll be someone and that, but we still take the report, we still do it because oh, they're just gone, they're just doing what they're doing. um they'll be back. Well, sometimes they didn't come back. So that's my take on missing murdered Indigenous person task force is get your plan first, get your people, and get your resources first. um Fort Berthold, MHA Nation, we provide those. My team, my interdiction team, I have a cadaver dog that's provided statewide. Statewide. Um, our agents that can go track provide it. Emily has, I believe, 2 tracking dogs. Um, those are all provided to anybody. We have teams. We have teams that will come and be boots on the ground and help or help develop that plan for you, because that's what it comes down to, and that's what we struggled the most with. Who's in charge? Who's in charge? Is it going to be the primary law enforcement? Is it going to be the emergency response team? And then how is that going to trickle down on a org chart? And we've developed it. We have a few hiccups. Everything does, but it works. It really works.
Thank you, Don, very much. Any questions at all?
Sorry, me again.
Yes, go ahead, Representative.
Um, Thank you, Don, so much for all the work you do. It's great to meet you and to kind of put a face to a name now. And again, I echo what she had said about who's in charge. And again, I'm coming into this as just got elected, saw a need, I'm trying to answer it. So it's through experiences that I've just been like, this is a gap. This is a need. Why isn't this being answered? And that I see is a big one. With Renzo, it was really who's in charge, because the idea that he fell in the middle of a bridge, in that moment we were in session here, got phone calls, and well, who's in charge? Well, we're working on that right now. Might be Bismarck, might be Mandan, we're not sure. Mandan's like, we'll take it. Okay, great. And then we get all these tribes saying, how can we come help? Can we bring our boats? Can we do this? Can we do that? Well, should we ask first? Well, who do we ask? I don't know. Well, then the governor's office. Well, I don't even know if you need to ask us. So it's just all those things, like, because I know Standing Rock wanted to be here ASAP, but can we bring the boats? Can we put our sonars in the water? Is that legal? Is there things that we can't do and can do? And mind you, this is, winter still, but they were willing to come up with horses and everybody. But there was this thing of like, well, who's in charge? Because yes, it's one of ours, and it wasn't just Standing Rock, it was Turtle Mountain, it was people from South Dakota, I think Montana even came, they were coming from all over, but they're like, well, who do we ask? And that's one thing, about our people is we try and be as respectful as possible. But then there came a moment, I was just like, I was talking, well, now it's Vice Chairman and Mike Faith, and he's like, well, who do we ask? I was like, you know what? We'll ask for forgiveness later. Just get up here. Just put them in. Let's just go. Let's just do this. And then I think Brad had called and said, we got the okay. I'm like, great. I don't know who that's from, but good. Let's do this. And same thing when in a different scenario. So this is a person, one of ours, off reservation, state, local. And that was where I'm like, where's the alerts at? How do you make a missing persons thing? And people are like, well, doesn't this police station do that? Nope, we don't do that. Well, who does that then? Okay, well, family gets on, they're putting things out. It's like, this has been a community family driven initiative to find Renzo. And so has, I think, up in Spirit Lake, same thing. And I know back home, it's the same thing. And from a different perspective, that was the first one that I went through was back home. We had a young girl that was, I guess, I don't know, a lack for a better word, taken with a older man from school, from the school system. She was 14 years old. This guy, 20 some years old, has a horrible record, but she went with him. But then we know he's a bad guy, doesn't have the great, again, the great record, and abducted, missing. What is that? And so we didn't know what to do. And we went into north, into the bush, we call it back home, where there was little to no service, had very little cell service. And thankfully at that time I was, again, still pretty new, and I called my brother Scott, who we used to be Indian Affairs, executive director. I'm like, Scott, how do we get help up here? Oh, let me call my buddy so-and-so, Lonnie. If not Lonnie, then it's this person. If it's not this person, it's this person. I was like, thank God. Because then we got state radio, and I didn't know any of that. our tribe, I mean, as much as we've tried, and I keep pointing to him because this is our MMIP chapter chair, and so we have that here, but yet, we still didn't know who's in charge, who can we call in, and thankfully it was just those few phone calls, but I didn't know that. Very few knew that, and it was thanks to that state radio, those pings, that we were able to find her and get them both. So that's my two experiences. And of course, going to help with Gemini Posey and Isaac Hunt searches. Nobody wanted to ride with Highway Patrol. So I was like, they're kind of like in a corner by themselves. I was like, well, I'll go with them. But I learned a lot about the dogs and the searching and the grid searching and, and then, down with Renzo of the community searches, that we have our own, and how do we do that respectfully with our traditions, with, that was one thing that I asked with the Burlington Northern. Hey, we want to go to that spot because in our ways, we need to call his spirit. We need to do these things from where they last known. And they were very willing to do that stuff. But, at the same time, and I say this not because I'm in this position, I'm saying this because I shouldn't have to be in this position for things to get done. I should have the mother should be able to call Burlington Northern themselves and make this connection. That's why, because if I'm not here, and if Brad isn't here or somebody else isn't here, there should still be that communication. And I saw that in the Belcourt scenario, in Renzo's scenario, and Spirit Lake scenario, that there's so many amazing people working on this, but there's this like, who's in charge? Who do we call? And that's why I got like with Savannah's Act, like call him. Okay, but how? What do we do? How do you connect with him? And not everybody has that information. So that's my thing. It's like, I don't know if there's a tree or something that can be a calling tree or something that you make up, but in these scenarios, we're all just like, because time is of the essence. And we got that horrible, horrible lesson last week in Spirit Lake once again. And I'm sorry I may cry, but she was on that phone for 16 minutes. And it shouldn't have taken that long to get to her. And so there has to be better communication, which saves lives. And I'm sick and tired of seeing every Monday more and more of our people going missing. And that's why I'm so adamant about the timing of things, who to call. And it shouldn't have to take somebody in this position to get those connections going. And so that's why I think the jurisdictional issues is huge in this, because it's state, it's local. To this day, Morton County, Burleigh County hasn't put out a red alert or a code red or a feather alert for Renzo. I mean, and again, we'll get to the feather alert and the code red because that's another one that's on my list, but I'll wait for that one. So it's these things that's when I saw for sure when, Representative Hawley, just in the instance of what went on in Belcourt, he said, I talked to Standing Rock and I was like, it was on my to-do list, so let's do it, because there's this lack of communication, but there's so many amazing people working on it. But the time is of the essence. And I'm sick of people, kind of pointing fingers, because I know there's so many amazing people again, but we have to figure this out. And it has to cross so many jurisdictions. And that's where I want to cut that. How can we cut that? So it's not me, you, and then you get to the person with the answer who can make the, authoritative decision. And I know that comes on a lot of our part too of tribes, because time is of the essence and we have to notify when our people go missing sooner rather than later. And that's one thing I think our tribes need to work on. And maybe that's an educational piece we can work on, is it's okay to call your daughter, your son, your grandma, even whatever, missing. Hey, I haven't heard from her in 6 hours. It doesn't need to be 2 weeks, because by that time I've learned dogs can't find you. it's long past all of the resources that we could bring in are useless then. So these are just things that I'm finding out in the 2 years I've been here. And so the jurisdictional issues, that's where I'd really love to really, like you said, Attorney General, is focus. And there's so much great work happening, but we're missing each other. And I would love to figure that out because it's there. We just need to put those puzzles pieces together. So thank you. I apologize for crying, but you know me, I'm a crier. So.
We did have one request from some folks online. They asked that if we are going to speak, if we would just say who we are for them first, and then we can address. So please, if you would try to keep us all honest on that, I'll try my best also. So thank you. Any other comments to be made on this point about the bullets we're on right now for the review and discussion of jurisdictional barriers between federal, state, local, and tribal law enforcement and community agencies?
I do. Hi, Representative Brown. Hi, Don. I Representative Dawson and I, or Holly and I, we were at MHA for tribal state relations and Senator Marcellet. We got to hear your council talk about Montreal and Mackenzie County specifically having issues with them and not cooperating with the MOUs that are in place. Is that something that you are experiencing?
I wouldn't put it down as like not cooperating. Again, it comes down to personnel. When you have a county and there's only 2 on for the county, or the other side of the county, which is not in the reservation. And the reason why it's Montreal and Mackenzie is because they make the majority of Fort Berthold. Um, it's yes, it is their lack of response, but we work through it. We work through it. Um, we know that, and that again, that's you as a tribal representative getting up and going and talking to that state's attorney, to that sheriff. You know, we understand. We understand if you only got 2 on, but I got, a team of 10 ready to go. And to us as a team and on Fort Berthold, it doesn't matter if they're enrolled or non-enrolled. It does not matter to us.
I have one more question,
Yes.
John. Are you guys cross-deputized as county as well?
No, we are not.
Okay.
We are not.
I'm sorry, Mr. Wrigley, Attorney General, is there a reason why that's not a possibility? Because they are an independently funded, tribally funded operation. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I don't have the answer at my fingertips, but it's one we can get.
It is that is up to the leaders, the chairman, and that sheriff to be able to do that, to want to cross deputize. Um, we is it something that is needed at times, but not unnecessary, if that makes sense. Um, we still get the job done. We if most of the time, again, I deal with drug users, dealers, dismantling those organizations. Yes, we do prosecute state. The state's attorneys do take our reports, do take our testimonies in those cases. People do get held accountable in those incidences. Um, but when it comes to missing, murdered Indigenous people, again, it's, in my opinion, and what I've seen and I've witnessed, and I can only speak for myself as an officer, is personnel. The lack of personnel within that law enforcement agency. There's still crime going on. There's still things that are happening. There's still emergencies, other places that are not on the res. And like I said, we get together as a team and we deal with what we have and we go forward. And Like I said, the only thing that who's in charge? Who is in charge? But we've established that now. We've had a few incidences where yes, the primary law enforcement is going to take over. We educate our lieutenants, our sergeants, even our sergeants can make that call to put it into iPods and get that message out on the phones. That right there, that is phenomenal. I will say this right now, if you don't have it, you should have it, and work with that program. Um, it's out there, it's available. It's something that needs to be utilized.
Can I speak on a couple of things, just to add some extra context? Uh, there's a few things I would love to backtrack on, but I won't go too far back. The liaison piece, I cannot echo any further than Jamie has, but there has to be more people communicating. In my 2 ranks ago, I was our cultural liaison officer, and I felt like I spent all of my time calling people from other agencies just to talk to each other. Like a call and say, hey, I'm Jenna from the Highway Patrol. I have zero authority in the lane I'm operating in right now, but you're from BIA and you're from this random city that has a missing person in it. I'm going to tie this other person into this phone call and basically monitor a conversation just to make it happen. And then the thing would happen that needed to happen, but there is such a missing piece there, and it is just conversations. People want to have them, but it's like picking up the phone is that hard. So that is a piece we have to work on massively in here. If I couldn't echo nothing else. Representative Brown, on the topic of tribal officers being able to be recognized in cross deputization, it's so doable. Now in 2021, we worked on a bill together with MHA and Turtle Mountain to have tribal officers recognized in century codes, specifically for on one part to make sure our MOUs were 100% mutual. So when we are coming to, like, if I'm coming to help Dawn, she can also help me if we need to go on or off tribal land. Incredibly helpful, but it also allowed the North Dakota Post Board the ability to say, yes, the academy that these officers attended is a qualifying academy, and we can issue that waiver. And they think they've pared it down to like a 1-week conversion class where you have to show that you know certain North Dakota laws and take this test. But where TAT is going even above and beyond in that is sending a lot of officers through our academy now too. So they're already doing the 12-week. There's massive pathways here that could still be used, but Don knows better than anybody when you're dealing with that many sheriffs and many state's attorneys. There's me stepping out of my highway patrol lane again, but I commend her for being able to operate in that world, because it is, whether there's an agreement or not, you still have to do the work every day. So anyway, there's such a pathway there. And in 2019 session, we had BIA officers added into Century Code too. So a lot, the foundation exists. It's the follow through that we're talking about here.
Yeah, Brad, if you could, Senator, you had your hand up first, and then we'll go over to Brad. So Senator, please.
Senator Chuck Wallen, District 4, from the Newtown area. So what Representative Brown was bringing up, it sounds like there's a communication issue, which has always been the issue. And the MHA Nation has a brand new state-of-the-art emergency response center. And it is, I've toured it, it's twice, it's excellent. I'm wondering, some of this communication, if it cannot be routed there, I know it's an extra step, but be routed there. And so if someone knows, who do I contact, who's in charge, who's this, if they would contact that center, and that center would have that information of, well, you're from here, you're here, here's who you contact. So you're not running around trying to figure out, do I contact this? We got one call, you call them and they'll tell you where you belong. And it might help, but it might add an extra step. That's the comment.
Thank you, Senator. Brad.
Yeah, I just have a couple comments, especially around jurisdiction and so our office kind of did some research, and we did this during session as this bill is being developed, about looking at what other states do. And so we have a list of what other states in the country are doing on this kind of task force. And so for us, we really feel like we should kind of look at some of those things that are working in those other states and incorporate them with this group. And But the part that I'm making sure that we talk with South Dakota, especially for Standing Rock and Siston Wapton, because they're across both state lines. And so we plan to meet with the Tribal Relations Office in South Dakota next month. And so this is gonna be one of the major discussion items is missing persons. And so we kind of want to hear from them what their plan is. I mean, who are their contact people? Just so we're all communicating because like you said, crime doesn't look at jurisdiction lines, you know, it happens everywhere. So, um, that's just one thing. I think, you know, the work that we're looking to educate not only the public, but even people working in the field, you know, we have turnover and there's, even our law enforcement's could be understaffed and so there's people transferring. I mean, a lot of that's happening and you see that on the list. So, but for me, the continual education is going to be a key piece of what we should suggest from this task force because that's something that's going to have to be ongoing. And it's not a one-time thing. But you know, whether or not we're going to utilize, say, our tribal colleges to do some of this or our university systems, I mean, something's going to have to be brought in to kind of continue this work. So I just wanted to bring that up to the task force, and just so we're kind of thinking that way, so we can kind of dive into that more down the road. So.
Thank you, Brad. So after that meeting you folks have with South Dakota, is that something, would it be worth when you're done with that at the next meeting? Hopefully you could present what you have or maybe share that, which is easier for your agency to do. Is the presentation more effective or sharing the information on an email or digitally?
We could do both. I mean, we could share some information directly and then we can kind of talk more about the details too.
Sounds great. Thank you. Any other comments for anybody? Okay. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
This is a question for my fellow tribal members that are here.
Stephanie, could you just state who you are for the folks?
Stephanie Yellowhammer, Standing Rock Sioux Tribe. Are you guys at Spirit Lake, MHA, Turtle Mountain? Are you guys direct service or 638 when it comes to your law enforcement?
MHA is 638. Our investigations is still BIA, and then we also have our MHA Division of Drug Enforcement. We're not yet, but we are, we have submitted a notice to BIA to take over our law enforcement. And if I may, I just wanted to just share something. I know Jamie, Representative Davis, had, brought it up and I was a little late today because the young woman who went missing last week, her services were today. And so I wanted to make sure that I was able to be there to support the family, during this difficult time. We worked 6 days, to thinking we were gonna, rescue her, but it ended up being a recovery. But because of the agencies and the response that we received from outside agencies, from our own people at home, we were able to her. And I don't think we would have been able to without the persistence of those agencies, without the persistence of our own chief of our fire chief, and without developing our own system, our own emergency response system. And I made it, a personal mission of myself after Jim and I went missing, and then Isaac went missing, that we need to take care of ourselves. We need to ensure that we have our resources there available so we're not looking in every direction and wondering who's coming, because that was the issue at the time. Our former chief of police, but she expected me to, bring the resources in, and I just assumed that because she was the law enforcement chief of police that she was bringing the resources in. And so that lack of communication, was there, and nobody came. I mean, eventually we had resources in, we had foot searches,
but by then it was too late. And when we did, finally get the FBI here at Spirit Lake, we were assuming that FBI would take over, but because there was no sign of a crime or anything committed, then FBI just, kind of, I feel like left it in the hands of the tribe to take care of, and left us, without resources, without an avenue to go down. And so now we have that. And I think it worked very well for us. And so, we would like to share those resources, and I know we have committed, some of our resources to Renzo's search, but, it goes back to us being able to establish those things ourselves, and, which is why I'm very thankful for this task force, because I think together, collectively, as a tribal nations, we could put something together where, we don't have to wait, where we respond accordingly, like we did with Tiny. And unfortunately, we weren't able to find her alive, but we did find her. We do still have two missing persons, Gemini Posey and Isaac Hunt. And so when we talk about jurisdictional issues, we don't have access to the NCI system. We're the federal government is over us. And so, there is issues, when it comes to tribal nations and us trying to share the information and find out what's going on. There's jurisdictional issues when we have cases involving, crimes where it's in the hands of the FBI. And so we're not able to be privy to any of the information. And so then at a tribal level in our tribal court system, they're sitting in there without any charges because we don't have any information that can come from the FBI. And so there's, a lot of jurisdictional barriers that we face as tribal nations, but, it's going to be of my position that we do this, to the best of our ability ourselves, because we know our people, we know when they're missing, so we're not being told we have to wait for 24 hours or 48 hours or 72 hours before we can report them missing because they've done this before. No, when we report somebody missing, we want them to be reported missing. I did ask for Gemini a notice to go out from the feather alert, when it came online, when, it was active, and we still weren't able to do that. We weren't able to do that for Isaac. And so to this day, Gemini has never received an alert. Isaac has never received an alert, and we have a feather alert. And so I have an issue with that. And so, being unable to find any resources to do that for ourselves, we coordinated with the local Lake Region Law Enforcement Center to do that for us. However, we were still unable to get them to send out a notice. And so, there are issues, but, I have hope here today. I prayed along the way because it was hard to pay my last respects, to Tiny, and then to drive here, knowing what I was coming for, knowing that we still have, two missing persons at Spirit Lake. And what do we tell their families? I wish we had the response that we had this last time, for those two individuals. And so we have to look at them and we have to, give them a hug and shake their hand and tell them that, we're going to try our best to do what we can almost 2 years later. So it's an issue when Isaac's picture is not up on the system. And, we as tribes, we lack that ability to do that ourselves. But there are agencies who, are here to do that for us. And if you can't do that for us, then who do we go to? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Right, no other comments on that area. I think we'll move on to the next is the identification of causes that contribute to missing and murdered Indigenous people and make recommendations to federally recognized tribes in the state to reduce cases of missing and murdered Indigenous people. Open that up for discussion by anybody present.
Lonnie?
Representative.
Thank you, Lonnie. One thing I would like, especially from our tribal nations, is if you could do somehow like a data compass on um, where you have maybe some lack of cellular internet on your reservations and how we can get more of that. Because I think that's one of the biggest issues. I come from rural North Dakota too, and I don't get cell service, but if you don't have cell service, you can't reach out for help or anything like that. So I think that's an ongoing discussion is how we can involve the private sector because they're always wanting to expand too, and how we can merge that onto the tribal reservations with that. And so that would be my ask to maybe the tribal nations, if you're like, well, this part of the nation is really bad or something like that, or some even boundary lines, or if there's only land lines in certain areas, I think that could be a good starting place, especially on the communication side.
Please go ahead.
Hi, Sashay Shetler, DPI. I'm also a citizen of the MHA Nation. Um, Prior to my work here at the Department of Public Instruction, I served as the Indian Education Director for Bismarck Public Schools. I also serve on the Board of Directors for YouthWorks and the Abused Adult Resource Center. And in my experience, there has been a lot of preventative work that can be done within school districts. There are individuals and organizations that target our K-12 students for human trafficking. Um, I'm also very passionate about this and working with children who have been taken from our schools, not just on reservations, but here in Bismarck. I feel very passionately about that. So anything that we can do to be preventative, but in this question explicitly, it says, and make recommendations to federally recognized tribes. We also need to be making recommendations to the state of North Dakota because a lot, I would say the majority of the issues that we face today are tied directly to the historical narrative of what Indigenous peoples have been through from first contact all the way up until uh, recent contemporary issues. So making sure that we're digging into that historical narrative to accurately define the root cause of these issues. So we're not just putting band-aids on it. Once again, that's
Thank you. Appreciate that. Anybody else have any comments at all under that subset today? Representative Davis.
Thank you. Again, I think that's why when we were developing this, we really wanted somebody from DPI, I guess, to be part of this is because we recognize that those, and again, it came from just for me, it came from my experience with this 14-year-old girl, why she chose to go with this man and she left the school. And that leads to, and I even had my own experience where my niece, who was 13 years old, moved back to the reservation, but she wanted to go back to Grand Forks where she knew her family and her friends. And she started to walk, and you know, a friend's dad picked her up, and we found her in a small town in outside of Rolla. And it's just like, yeah, I know you're a good guy, but man, the wrong person to pick you up. That there's so much that could have went wrong here, but I remember being that age and thinking, I'm invincible. Nothing's gonna touch me. I just had the view of the world that I'm okay, but it's not that, unfortunately. And we all know the stats, of course, for Indigenous women, young girls. So that's why I think it's really important, like you said, Sassy, to um, get to the root. What is going on here? And because, and again, going back to Councilwoman Yellowhammer's statement about runaways. Yeah, runaway, like my niece technically ran away, but somebody picked her up and then she was missing. So what signifies and how are we to ever know when they leave on their own, but then all of a sudden become missing because they ran into somebody that had other ideas? To constitute what is a runaway, and then when does that change to actual missing endangered person? We don't know that, unfortunately. So why, I agree with you. They're missing. So what is the difference? And I've talked to Jenna about this, and she's given me, like, there's people out there that help with this specifically in runaways, which is great. But also, again, they're still missing. So how do we, again, there's all of these specifically right here, 3 things that all come together. And in my image, I see my 13-year-old niece. And we did everything we can to, help raise her right. She knows her, but you just have these strong-willed kids sometimes, and that's anybody, right? I mean, if it was your children that just didn't like what you said for some reason, took away their Xbox, I don't know. But that's all it takes sometimes. And so how can we educate? And I think getting to your point, Brad, also more education on this of the, not that we want to scare people, because I'm not of that either. I don't want to scare people against the world. This is a beautiful place. And like you said, Attorney General, there's more good people out here than there's bad. But we also have to make them aware that things can happen. And if how do you educate? How do you give more resources in the school systems to say, I want to go with this guy, but I don't want to put you on lockdown either, but here's a resource. Here's a teacher. Here's somebody paying attention. Or the runaway. Here's the resource for the family. Again, these things exist, but they're just not coming together. So, again, I don't know if there's a way to, and I'm glad this question is on here, of the root cause of this, because we're never going to get anywhere unless we address that. And these young girls, young boys grow up to be adults, still making those decisions. And, unfortunately, I think it gets worse and worse. And, I think that's where we got to start. So again, maybe more resources, I'm not sure, but I appreciate you all bringing that up. And I just wanted to tie that together from, I guess, my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucy, anything to add to that from the DPI side?
Lucy Fredericks, DPI. I just wanted to make a comment on Representative Holly's. I know during COVID 2020, they did do a where they checked all of the signal and, making sure that, because of course the students had to go online, during that time. So, and if I remember right, there was a pretty high percentage of people that had either access to or where they had signal. And so I know they made sure, to make sure that that was done. So we could probably look at that also. But I think also within the schools, I think that's something that we could maybe take a look at is, some training or PD, or even for educators and staff, to be aware, and maybe even, to the high school level, or so I think that there's something that we could definitely look at. We would just need, to kind of research that and, see what's available and how we can address that. So thank you.
Thank you, Lucy.
I'll just tack on to what the boss said. Unfortunately, it's not just the high school that this is happening. It's middle and elementary as well. But one of my cases, to what Jamie had mentioned, they were in communication with an older man, and when they went missing, the family didn't report them. It was actually friends that had spoke up and said that they were missing. And it was the Youth Works Task Force, our navigators, that actually went out and made those connections. And then we found her in a different state in a hotel with a man.
Thank you. And Dawn, go ahead.
Working with a lot of people, one of the things that is prevalent on the reservation, trauma of any kind, either as a child, as an adult. Um, that right there to me is the cause. Um, for addiction, or a person to be murdered sometimes, somebody's obviously under the influence, or that's just how they're living their life right now. Um, how do we prevent it? How do we stop it? Um, this is either really good or really bad for your cell phone. I mean, our children are under so much more stress than any of us sitting in this room when we were a child's age, even at the age of 5 or 6. These little kids can get into these phones, they go on YouTube, they see this. If you're not monitoring, that's what they're watching, that's what they're seeing. I've had 9-year-olds, I have 11-year-olds that are talking to grown men. Um, I became proactive. I entered into with BCI an MOU, first of its kind for North Dakota, was the Internet Crimes Against Children. We updated our laws. That's another thing that needs to be looked at within your respective tribal governments and law enforcement. Speaking with law enforcement, officers, what's working, what's not working, holding people accountable at that tribal level with these particular crimes. Don't always be dependent upon the federal government to sit here and say, okay, well, you're going to prosecute them. No, you can, as a tribe, do it yourself. You have to update your laws. Look at them as living documents and continue on. So we've done that. We've done that. I am about being proactive instead of reactive, and I feel that as tribal nations, that sometimes the rut that we get into is being reactive, and then it's like, okay, who's got the plan? You know, stop and go to and ask. Like one of the things that I did see work in our school system is that we have peer support people. These are individuals that were addicts. They are in recovery. They were once that kid. They were once that child. And one of the things that when we debriefed about it, when they went into the schools and talked to the children, Don, they just want somebody to talk to. Because one of the things that I see now that we prosecuted all these addicts at a federal, state, and tribal level, we got grandma and older auntie raising these kids. There's a generation gap. My grandma did not like the internet. She thought it was the devil. And she did not understand it. And as much as I explained it to her, that it's a good tool, however you use it, nope, nope, nope. So you have little kids that are on the internet, they're not going to monitor it. Those grandparents are not going to monitor it. They have no clue. Um, that something is education, even from kindergarten on up, and do it by age group. Because when you lump them all together as kids, 5 or 6-year-old attention span is 3 to 5 minutes. Junior high school, unless you're not, unless you're talking about something, you know, in the now, you're you're not gonna. It's pointless. I really strive to get people, especially our peer support people, because they were there. They understand. I don't understand. I had a great childhood. I had grandparents, my mother. I had a family. I don't understand not having a family. I don't understand not having anything. I don't understand going hungry. I don't understand taking care of 5 little siblings at home. I don't understand any of that. And that's what a lot of our clients that I work with in my field, they talk about. And yes, education, resources to trauma. Even if it's just a talking circle 2 times a week and only 2 people come or even one person comes, at least you're attempting in your community to try to address situations. Grief support. I cannot tell you how many people I have dealt with that got into drugs and did something that they regret because they were under the influence because they couldn't deal with grief. I know in North Dakota, as a general, mental health is something we lack, but we can as our own people, each respective tribe, we had our own ceremonies, we had wiping of the tears, we had all these things, it's implementing them. But then again, it goes back, who's going to do it? Who's going to be that person? On Fort Berthold, even if you don't know, Bismarck Mandan area has the largest population of MHA. Even here, we provide services, sweats, ceremonies to help you. We're out there, and it's just not to MHA people, it's to everybody. And that's why I'm really happy about this task force, is it is everybody's point of view, because what works for my reservation is probably not going to work for yours, but there might be one part of it that does. And as long as we can get those ideals going, that's a win for me. So that's just how I see about the missing and murdered and the children. Um, Again, the internet, you just have to educate. And that's what we tried to do. We really went into the schools. We talked to them. We talked to them also too as a separate, um, young girls, young boys, everybody. That's how we addressed it. Uh, and just using your own resources within your community.
Yeah, there's no, I don't know if there's any better, there are other areas, but not any better area to look at for the importance of a seamless approach to so many of these issues across boundaries, whether they be county or tribal or what have you, than looking at things involving the internet and the phones. You see it that I mentioned before the BCI task forces that we've set up around the state. And by the way, Lonnie and the BCI, and then Nick Chase, who's our new U.S. attorney, he was my first assistant when I was U.S. attorney the second time, deserved tremendous credit for that. I remember we were signing that first one, though, up at Spirit Lake, and the chair at the time was asked a question by the media, well, what about the issue of your sovereignty? What about the issue of your sovereignty? You're basically inviting in state law enforcement and the surrounding county and police departments. And he looked at them and said very simply, this is the only hope we have for our sovereignty. He said, we have no BIA presence that to the degree that we need it. Our only hope for our sovereignty is that we can maintain law and order out here on the reservation. And I think it's a recognition that those lines into the jurisdiction question, everything else, they've got to find. They're not. It's not going to always overlap, but it should be seamless. People should know, where is this being handled. The legislature very wisely this last session put through new laws, made them felonies with regard to trafficking in child. Well, I don't know what everybody thought was going to come out of that, but I had a press conference 2 months ago about a situation that's taken hold in the West Fargo area, going over into Minnesota. All of a sudden, some people they didn't like that law very much. Like, oh my gosh, this is kind of a fancy school. Some of these kids are kind of fancy, going through this whole thing. And you're like, I've met with the victims' families. I've met with some of the victims of this. People are making images and doing everything else. I won't go through the whole war story on it. That's still a developing case. BCI is leading that investigation. It's serious conduct, and it doesn't respect boundaries between schools and communities and everything else. It's spreading like a virus. I got an update the other day from Jesse Smith, our specialist, our special agent who's working on this matter, a forensic specialist. Oh, there are no boundaries at all. So some of the things we're talking about, by the way, aren't problems between jurisdictional boundaries between the tribal lands and the county and then a community. It'd be the same difference between Dickinson and Fargo and Mott and Grafton. I mean, some of this is just there's differences in geography. But what I'm hearing here over and over and over, my takeaway from this is going to be too, is this not giving up sovereignty. We're not going to give up that we've got tribal law enforcement. We're not going to give up in county and we've got BC, everything else. We're going to figure out how to make it mesh better, just mesh better so that when all hell breaks loose and I'm making a phone call, I know, and if, let's say I didn't call the right one. To Jenna's point, exactly. Okay, well, someone will just, and that is, by the way, what most often happens. They try to make that seamless. They try to do that, but it doesn't always work. Groups like this can facilitate that. Discussions like this can facilitate that, and then we all go back and we talk with our areas of influence and try to make that seamless going across. But these phones have broken it all down, and we better find a way to make sure that we're keeping up with it, keep a pace. And the area of child pornography and exploitation of young people. And by the way, probably none of you have ever looked at a file for child pornography. So when I was U.S. attorney, when I was a state prosecutor, we had none. When I was U.S. attorney, I went through my first file. I made it about a quarter of the way through, and I'm pretty callous, I suppose, after all these years in law enforcement. I've looked at a lot of murder scene photos. Well, you name it. This is horrible. If you've got the idea that this is, oh, well, this is sort of Playboy for short people, which would be terrible enough, it's not. It's the most outrageous victimization that you can even envision. And it's out there and it's spreading and young people are being exposed to it, wittingly or unwittingly, and all sorts of things are going on. And there's an education component to it. There's a law enforcement component to it. Our legislature, as I said, they just passed out. The law we're using in this investigation just got passed this last time around and became the law in North Dakota in August, and it's going to do some good. Your friend, the Attorney General, is taking it on the chin from some corners. My favorite columnist who likes to point out how bad I am at stuff. It doesn't like that we're doing this, that I was talking about it publicly, but it's an education piece. 20,000 people watched the live stream of my press conference, and it's not because I'm fascinating. It's the subject matter. They wanted to see what's going on with these phones and these kids. And the conduct, not in all of their instances, but in some of it, it is criminal. It's not boys being boys. And everybody around this table, all of our people are, everybody that in our personal sphere and in community spheres and statewide is impacted by it. So discussions like are going on here, they need to be going on between our non-tribal communities and each other too, making sure that geography is not our enemy in the state. And this is a really important discussion in that regard as well. Well, if I'm the chair for the moment, I'll call on you.
Okay. Okay, Stephanie Yellowhammer. So I'm kind of glad DPI is here because isn't there educational content standards in regards to digital citizenship? That's a mouthful to say, but maybe that's something, since the conversation here seems to be education or whatnot. What can be done with DPI and adding those education content standards and whatnot? And my background's in education too, by the way, so I'm very well aware of the North Dakota standards. So, I mean, I know that's a piece that maybe could be looked at, like the digital citizenship, like the different, being an active civic, knowing your roles and responsibilities online, what to do, what not to do. So, I mean, I'm kind of glad you guys are here now because that's, talking about cell phones, internet, and educating our students and whatnot.
Lucy Fredericks, DPI. Thank you for that, Stephanie. We definitely will look into that. And then I'm sure you're all aware of the bill that passed also about students not having their cell phones in the schools during the school day. And just visiting with Superintendent Basler, that seems to be going fairly well. We do have some, pockets where somehow they do get through, or they're texting their parent, and they're like, well, you're not supposed to be doing that, in school. But overall, I think that has helped. And the feedback that we've gotten so far is that it is, they're being more focused, they're talking to each other in the schools, things like that. So, but yeah, we will definitely look at the digital content standards and see what we can come up with with that. So maybe at the next meeting, we can report on that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you. Representative Dawson Hawley from District 31. Lucy or Sassy, maybe you could answer this question. Is there, I went through high school a few years ago, so here.
Same.
Yeah. And so I know that there was like a campaign to like end drugs in school and stuff like that. Is there a campaign for this issue or like that we could introduce in schools? My mom makes me have the Life 360 app. It's a online tracking thing to make sure where you know where you are constantly. But I think that's something that we could also implement too, for our parents as a resource too, of like, this is free, you should have it. So then if it does happen, then you can be like, this is where you're last found at. And maybe that could be something that DPI can put together, or even this task force here, but would love your thoughts, either one of you. So.
Thank you for your question. I would say that having some like a push for some type of movement like that would be really good. The only piece that we see as a barrier is the sensitive nature of human trafficking and missing and murdered Indigenous peoples. Um, like I had mentioned earlier, it's not just our high school students, it's our middle and it's our elementary school students. Um, so it would be navigating those difficult conversations with public schools, but that's not necessarily something that DPI could mandate, but it could be something that we could help support.
Lucy Fredericks, DPI. Yeah, we'll definitely take that back to our leadership and see what their thoughts are and what could be done. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And Representative BCI, if you want to put us on your Life 360, we can also track you if that's going to make you feel better. All right? Okay. Sounds good. So thank you all. If it's, we're just about that 3 o'clock timeframe, I think we're going to move down to the next bullet, which is identification of strategies to improve interagency communication, cooperation, and collaboration to remove jurisdictional barriers and increase reporting and investigation of missing Indigenous people. I'd like to open up that topic for discussion, please. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Marsley, District 9, I've been writing a few comments down, and I don't know if all the tribes identify their resources as consolidated. Do you have that available to you of what resources they have? And if something happens in the missing and murdered Indigenous people, maybe we need to consolidate them and also get the names of the individuals that are responsible for each tribal nation. So we have something to go by in planning and everything. I'm hearing communication problems, jurisdictions. I mean, who's the county sheriff and all this? So then we got, and with phone numbers and emails. I think we need to start a resource guide, you might say, for information needed whenever a person's missing. And just to comment on the cell phones with the students, I know my grandkids are monitored by their parents. Why can't we do that with all of the, since the kids love these cell phones, why not put a monitor on them? So when they're missing, we find the cell phone, we find the individual. Just a suggestion.
Thank you, Senator.
Yeah, I'm just gonna add one thing if I could to that last point. You could perhaps see that not every person would want to have that monitoring on their phones, or every family wouldn't want to utilize it. Some wouldn't, but we have the capability right now through law enforcement, and not every agency does. It's kind of expensive, but the technology, put in that phone number and you can get within about 3 feet of that phone. I'm not sure how widespread that technology is, but it's readily available. The Marshal Service has it, for instance. And so that's a resource that comes in awfully handy, but it isn't always available. Lonnie, do you know anything about that? How widespread having that capacity, put that in that number for person X, and then we'll be able to find that phone.
So,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, have they used that in the past
Well,
to
they've
find
used-
some of the missing people?
Senator, yes, we have. And a lot of times what it is we will get a subpoena for that person's phone number. Many times we'll use it for drug trafficking organizations or targets of law enforcement. And that'll give us true and real-time GPS readings on the individual.
I probably just gave up like a state secret or something, but it's not a state secret. It's out there and it gets used, but it's not a situation where every single person that goes missing that they'll, utilize that. It's just there are protocols like anything else that it's available.
This is your next media report.
That's right. That's right. Why is that guy always talking? Yeah.
Comments on the subset we're on. I know Representative Davis, you wanted to talk about the feather alert. That's probably a very good one to possibly bring that up. So if it's okay, I'll turn it over to you for a moment.
Great,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Representative Jamie Davis, District 9. Yeah, and I have a list of other things, but I'll start with the feather alert. So we've had 2 feather alerts issued. The first one was, I think, in Stanley area, if I remember correctly, Trenton area, which is a sister tribe to us in Turtle Mountain. And got the information on that. Feather alert went out. She was found, I think, like 2 hours later, which was great. It came from the information was beautifully done. And there I just assumed like an alert on your phone went out. I didn't know, I didn't have any contacts there. So I just was like, well, whatever happened. I saw it on, I was in Bismarck here at the time. I saw it on the social media page and was like, okay, it's working. Great. And then a couple weeks ago, or a week or so, 2 ago, we had Tiny in Spirit Lake, and Representative Colette Brown notified me of what the feather alert came out as, and it was not what we expected at all. And so it made me think of like, well, what happened in Stanley? Because it was a weather alert that actually came to her phone, and that is not at all what we had. And I think it was the week before that or a few days before that, I got a tour of the state radio and the emergency place. I mean, it's an kind of place in down the road here. But there I had asked, and I recalled this because in our discussions with the legislative, during legislative session, the feather alert, and I guarantee, I understand that the actual alert that go out across the state has to be an abduction. I understand that. That's all the way down the line. But in the discussion about specific areas, there was to be geofencing. And I thought, great, that makes way more sense that you wouldn't have to send out because they're right here. And I thought of in Belcourt, when that young girl went missing, we didn't need the whole state. We just needed this area to be on the lookout for this guy and this girl. So that made sense to me. And then when I went to go visit the state radio, I mean, that was amazing. And I hope I don't give away any secrets here, but they're using AI to pinpoint, even if you go up a flight of steps, that's how accurate it is. Like it shows that. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And so I said, so you can geofence this, for lack of a better word. I don't know what it's called, not a techie. And she's like, yes, we can send out, it goes off of the radio towers. It does this. They were explaining it all to me. And I was like, oh my God, okay, this is what we do for the feather alert. And at that moment, I was thinking that's what happened in Stanley. But then when it came to Spirit Lake, what happened? And then, I messaged Jenna at like 5 a.m, I think it was, and, got back to me a little later. How dare you sleep? No, I'm just kidding. But, and then other people were saying, I got Life 360 and I didn't know what that was. So I had to Google that because I don't have that. And where they're like, well, we got it on ours, an alert, but we had to opt in, I think it was. And so I'm getting these messages like, how come a feather alert isn't going out? How come a feather alert isn't going out? And I'm like, I don't know. And then you had messaged me back and said it has to go local. And I'm like, okay, this is not what we discussed. This isn't supposed to go out as a weather alert from a local or a code red. Code red was never anything that we discussed it was supposed to be a geofence. And so I know those capabilities are there. And again, when you have only two people working at this sheriff station in this county, and like you said, they're doing 1,000 other things, and somebody goes missing in a small town, you know, that's where I feel like the state can still come in. That's where I feel like the state can say, we got this. Because you go off and take care of Devil's Lake area, and Spirit Lake, you take care of yours because you only have two people on staff, and Devil's Lake, you only have one or two on staff. State can step in and we got this. We'll send out the feather alert. And, to go out as a weather alert, I mean, we get a lot of, as Indian people, and that's, I'm just going to be blunt here. We get the shaft a lot. We get less than, we get the crumbs, just take it because we're doing you a favor in the first place. And that's how this felt. Because, and you gave me, I sent you like 50 million questions, and I appreciate you, very thoroughly answering all of them. And it was like, we can't enforce this at the local level. And I'm like, well, what the heck did we do this for? Why did we go through all of this if we have to depend on the local level to choose to send out a feather alert as a weather alert? What the heck am I fighting this for? And you know how much we went back and forth. So I'm just like, it infuriated me to no end that, it's to me, it was a simple thing. And I know we have that capability. And so why aren't we as the state using it? And and then at the same time, yes, the local levels should still be able to do that, send out the code red. Our tribes should be able to have our own to send it out. I'm not saying we don't have authority and responsibility here, but the more the merrier. Like you said, the more people that know, it works. And we've seen it. When more people get it, it works. And so people were confused, people were upset, and I get it. And so that's one thing about the feather alert that I would really like to fix. I don't know how, if we need to go. I hope we don't need to go. And I know you had said, Jenna, you were, hoping to work on a few things that wouldn't take legislative session. Because God, I don't want to do that. But if it needs to be, we'll do it. But I just feel like if it has to be a code red, then be a code red. If it has to be some other alert, I just want to know what it is. But when all that else fails and the tribe is busy and they don't have enough staff and the local is busy, they don't have enough staff, that's when the state has the resources. And I know we do because I saw it with my own eyes. And so why can't we use that and make those decisions right away? So I'll stop there. If you can maybe answer a few of those questions, I would appreciate that for not just my questions, but I don't know if anybody else has any, Representative Brown and Chairwoman Street of the experience that happened during that time as well. Thank you.
I just have a comment, you know, like Representative Davis shared, and I did talk with Jenna, about this situation as well. But, for the sake of the task force, I brought this to the attention of the highway patrol as well, that, the feather alert obviously didn't, roll out like I expected it either, because I didn't get a notice at all either. And so come to find out, there was a form that had to be filled out, or you had to fill something out, someplace. But that goes back to, providing education, back to our communities as far as, what needs to be done and how this was going to be rolled out. When I think about it, to me, and I'll just, tell you how I felt like, this is a part of, for us, we value every moment, just like what was explained earlier when Tiny made the 911 call. And I know we had talked about, maybe these systems will wake somebody up at 4 in the morning or 3 in the morning, but with the situation with what happened to Tiny, if the response could have been there a little, a couple minutes sooner, she might be here today. And that goes back to an alert system. You're just gonna wake me up at 4 in the morning, but I'll probably see it and go back to bed. But there's a lot of our people whose names are gonna come across that feather alert or a missing silver alert or amber alert who we're not ever gonna either see again, or the next time we see them is gonna be in a casket. So I think it doesn't matter, if you're waking me up at 3 a.m. to notify me that somebody's missing, because we all want to look at each other with the same value system, that our lives matter, that we're humans. And that's kind of how I felt, when that notice didn't come across my phone and I started seeing it, on Facebook, and I was down at the search site, and down there hoping, and then anticipating that notice to come across my phone, and it didn't. And so I think, educating, our community as to what needs to be done until we can get the system changed. Because it needs to be changed. We need to be able to notify our communities, not just tribal communities, all communities, that there's a person missing, not a brown person, not a white person, a person. Thank you.
I'll wait till everybody has comments and then maybe I can address them all once. So if there's other ones, I'll wait for them. Otherwise I can go. Okay. Representative Brown? Yeah. Okay. I'll wait.
I just wanted to echo Chairwoman Street's message along that, as a relative of Tiny's family and Representative Davis's efforts on writing this bill. It's hard to stand there with the family the next day and for them to ask, why wasn't there sound? Why did this come across? Is there gonna be another one? How come it's like that? I was like, this is new. It's a new system. We're still learning. I didn't have all the answers. I couldn't answer them. It was really hard for me to do that. And I felt like I failed my community. I felt like I failed my family. And it created so much confusion, which was not needed at that time.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Jenna, Highway Patrol for those who are online. I'll backtrack a little bit just to kind of give an overview of before the bill was passed and some of the education that we've done and what we plan to continue doing, and then also address some of these questions. And I want to do so with the utmost respect for the sensitivity of everything also being very recent, because all these people who go missing, who come into the alert system, are loved ones. They have names, they're not just numbers. And so when I talk about some of that, please don't take that in any sort of way that feels cold, because I dream about these alerts, and especially in the last week and a half here. So once the bill was passed, we have educated at all the tribes except for we're planning dates at Sisseton, Wahpeton, Oyate still, planning out that with their law enforcement. And these education blitzes have been available to not just law enforcement, they're open to community, to people who would do search and rescue or have that in their official title or not. It doesn't matter. So if people had questions or wanted to learn, they could come. And we plan to do more. It's not ever an education one and done, because we know even amongst law enforcement, we have to constantly educate law enforcement and emergency managers how to use the alert system and then what to do locally as well. The criteria for Feather Alert and then the Missing Endangered Persons Alert that were introduced at the same time have matching criteria, except for the Feather Alert is if you're Native American, that will be categorized as a Feather Alert. We will never delay a Feather Alert if we're trying to figure out if the person is Native American or not, we'll always put it out in the fastest way possible. So sometimes it might come out as an MEP alert. And I say all of this because we also depend on all of you to help us educate. We try as much as we can, but just can't reach everybody. We'll continue trying though. And so we also, just as a side note too, for the alerting system, if the person is Native American but is a child and was abducted, we'll always use the Amber Alert system because we know name recognition is the biggest piece and people get found faster on an alert type that people already know. And Amber Alert, for example, is in every state and in 41 countries across the world. So it's a very robust and strong system. I sincerely appreciate questions, concerns, how we can do better. I recognize the fact that I appear as the spokesperson for the alert system and I take full responsibility too, but we have a big team that comes together, makes these decisions and helps kick these alerts out to the public across Highway Patrol, BCI, and DES. And so there's a lot that I think we can do prior to a legislative session if that's what's needed. As Representative Davis and I have talked back and forth a lot and also through Indian Affairs Commission. A lot of that is, yes, state capabilities too, but also a local level of we have tried before and we'll continue to try to let them know what they have the capability to do. We can't mandate that they do local alerting, for example, but Dawn and I were just talking about their involvement in IPAWS and how incredibly powerful it is for a local entity, whether that be tribal or county, to have their own ability to do that. I struggle a lot with the alerting piece on cell phones, and it was a huge conversation during session, and we could really get into the weeds, but I won't right now. I think it maybe looks like a more detailed alerts overview in one of these maybe, or whatever that looks like. But we talked to so many states and we've looked within and states that are similar to us and what happens if we over alert people. And we know from other states that that means that people will not pay attention to them as much, but that doesn't mean that people's disappearances are not important. That doesn't mean that that there isn't an expansion in the future. And the only way we can figure out what that is from these exact conversations. So I sincerely appreciate it. I know that there needs to be improvements and that is stemmed exactly from this. But we have a lot of touch points and things that we've already created since the 2 feather alerts that we've had to know how to do them better, both stateside and also locally. We have trained every emergency manager in the state twice since August 1st, actually before August 1st to now, and reached as many dispatchers as will listen to us, as many cops as will listen to us, and opened up as much as we can make these trainings available in person to the community. But we'll continue to do more. And these touch points on improvements have to happen here. So I sincerely appreciate it. I would continue to take questions, but I also want to make sure Dawn can talk about IPAWS at MHA. And I know Spirit Lake's on their way there, which is going to be huge. It's an incredibly powerful tool, which is also what we use in the alerting program.
Too sure when it actually started, but yes, I did get done. Yeah. I just know that Don White, MHA Nation, it's been well over 2 years now. I want to say over 3. Yes, I did get woken up in the middle of the night on one of the alerts. But what's important to you, you're going to respond to. If this ain't important to you, then, you know, yeah, you're probably going to go on social media and be upset. You got woken up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, but guess what? My team was out helping search, looking for people, because that's what we were to do, go complete the mission. It's an incredible tool. And that's a question I have asked, I asked to each nation here is, Do you know your emergency response team or commander or who that individual is? That person also needs to be in steady conversation and work well with your primary law enforcement agencies. Of each emergency system. Because that's right there, when that alert goes out, from the law enforcement perspective, is that the chief of police is gonna say, hey, Don, we got this. This is what's going down. I'm gonna tell my whole team. He's gonna tell his whole team. EMS, be on standby. Fire, be on standby. Woodland Fire, be on standby. You guys might have to go track. Where's all our resources? It works also too when you train. Don't wait for the emergency to happen. I mean, train at least, I would say at least 4 times a year with your people, because communication is always been the killer for all of us. And the lack of, and that's another thing too, I know is an issue, is what radio system are we all gonna go on in that respective area? That right there has always been the biggest hurdle in every missing person I have had with, and I'm talking about, I have to be with like 4 to 5 different law enforcement agencies. We all have our own respective primary radio channel, but when we're out there running around, which one is it gonna be? That's something that we do touch on, we do talk about, and we try to discuss on our safety briefings prior to going out. But if you don't have IPAWS, Emily Sitting Bear, she's the one that has the paperwork. She's the one that we also give that whatever we have to fill out. And then it's also educating all your emergency response teams, the head of them, to know what is going to exactly go on there, what's going to be sent out in that, because it has to be exact and it can't be like a big, paragraph. It's only going to be about maybe 2 to 3 sentences. That's it. It's not going to be a whole lot. And we have to be very accurate with that information. And I could care less if 5 go out in a month. At least we're doing something. I don't think there is no such thing as over responding. If a local law enforcement is not going to do it at the tribal level for a federal alert, and they want it to fall back on the state, Lonnie, couldn't we do the BCI agent that's assigned to our reservations? Is that something that could be doable?
As far as Dawn, as the person that is the point of contact then?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. That the BCI agent could be and definitely assist with the local entity, filling out the correct paperwork for the alerts. Absolutely, they could.
Yeah.
Thank you, Don. Stephanie.
So I'm gonna say it, but not all of our reservations in North Dakota have the revenue or the resources to utilize and create a lot of these opportunities for our tribe. So I know that MHA has a really excellent emergency management office, and they do a lot with their drug enforcement and whatnot, but For us, it comes down to having the funding to access a lot of these resources for these trainings, to purchase, whether it's to utilize the system or whatnot. So maybe that's something that this task force, if whatever they decide moving forward, could assist with. But then again, if we reach out to Terry Van Horn, he might have some free of charge training opportunities that we could tap into, utilize. So I mean, I think we need to keep that in mind, is that as tribal nations, yes, we are all Indigenous people and share a lot of the same struggles, but we're also very different as well. So that's one of the things that we run into a lot, is that we know what we need to do. It's just that we don't have the funding for it. You know, when we were talking about this, some of the identification causes that contribute to it, you know, I know Don from MHA here talked a lot about trauma. Well, I truly believe that if we had more homes and housing on our reservation, it would help alleviate a lot of the drug use, the alcohol, and all of that stuff that we have going on. But of course, we also need the professionals, the clinicians, the LACs, the, you know, different type of mental health professionals to help us achieve that. So I really believe that, you know, and we talk about our kids in the school and some of the things they're exposed to. Well, when you have families and with living with families, and you don't know what happens within the homes because they're so crammed and doubled up, it's that's why we see a lot of our young women maybe drinking to help numb the pain, or leaving a situation because they're tired of it. So I just wanted to bring that up. I know I'm backtracking on some of it, but for us it comes down to accessing resources and having the funding to do a lot of this stuff. Again, you know, I'm talking to the state here when, you know, a lot of the fiduciary responsibility comes from the federal government, you know, for our, based on some of the treaties that we had signed. So I just want to keep that in mind, that, you know, although we are all alike, we're also very different in our different ways.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Appreciate that.
I thought of a couple more things as follow-ups between sessions on Feather Alert. As Dawn's talking about iPods, and I just did a quick Google to make sure I was right and had her tell me I was. iPods is free to sign up for, but there's the base fee for software, which Dawn said they used a grant to get. We have a incredible resource at the state, Eric Upton, who runs our iPods system. I don't know what his fancy title is, but it's one of his jobs. And he has always said he will help anybody set that up, which is an incredible resource. And then the amount of grant writers at the state that will also help lend resources is just an incredible amount. And so I think that that's something that should be visited here. And that's, yes, driven on one part on the local level, but we have so many resources at the state to share there. But it's so much sometimes more useful for people who are not wearing a uniform to ask questions, because we can say it over and over and we don't necessarily get listened to even from our law enforcement counterparts, because they are wearing 10,000 hats too. And so there's that like external accountability piece is just so incredibly helpful. I had something else that I knew was just fantastic. Oh, it is fantastic because I learned it from Chairwoman Jackson Street last week. But in talking about communication in different places and the way that people receive communication different places, I know this, but it was just an aha moment last week during our meeting when you're telling me so many people have a phone. There might not be minutes, but that's how they're going to receive their communication. And I am thought about it so much too since, but there are different groups of people that want to receive way more information than other groups. In rural areas, people are incredibly tight knit. I grew up in a very rural area too, and they want all the information where we get into our bigger populous areas, and they're incredibly annoyed about helping their neighbor sometimes, which is disheartening because if it were up to Steve and I, we'd go on everybody's phone and not let them be able to turn alerts off. But just some stuff I know we can work on very quickly is stuff like that and ways that different people are receiving their information. So we do have follow-ups.
Thank you, Jen. Appreciate that. Representative Davis.
Thank you. So just a follow up to that, I guess I would like clarification on, is that something that we can change then? Speaking of the geofencing of the feather alert, is that something we can use now? Because I appreciate the pause and all that, but like we said, a lot of our reservations aren't going to get that up and running
Yep.
tomorrow.
Yep.
And something might happen now.
Like Spirit Lake does, they contract with Lake Region LEC. Too many acronyms here. And so while I think alerting authority, it would be fantastic if the tribes can all get it, they can be used today by the counties. And so there's two different versions. So that Code Red Reverse 911 that we talked about, that's that subscription version. iPause is that forced cell phone piece, which is doable through the counties, which then would overlap the entire reservation since of the shared geography. So that's something doable even today, but that's with local partnership.
They would still have to choose to do that.
Yes, and I'm always cautioned by my good resource on the iPods on the state is we can't tell them to do it or not to do it. And I'm like, but I'm very good at strongly encouraging and not going away. And so we can do that piece. So that's doable without a legislative change.
So
the feather alert, though, just to be clear too, sorry to interrupt you. We put both the last two out statewide, but that cell phone piece is the piece that's separated out in Century Code, which is the WIA wireless emergency alert. And to try to put it in, I don't know, I might get on time for a little bit here. Okay, so the wireless emergency piece in our internal conversation of 20 or so folks that look at these alerts constantly, the reason that that was separated out, which I know we talked about some during meetings and in testimony, when we ask other states who are similar to us that send out alerts for no matter who it is, what their circumstances are, their effectiveness rate goes down incredible amount. Sometimes as low as 11% of people get found based off the alert because of that over alerting. And so we're hesitant to open it up when it's not, say, an abduction case or somebody has their like on our silver alerts, that's what most people are commonly aware of. They have dementia, they don't know how to find their way home, et cetera. So I've been calling around in the last week to have more intensive conversations with states that have specifically a feather alert or one that's called something else and similar. And the last person I talked to this morning, he said at first we had one we put out and four that we said no to. So I asked him for circumstances because we want to, like, we need to figure out how to do this better quickly. And he said, then the next session, we just said anybody that's missing and we're on track to put out 800. And I said, well, how often are people found when you use it now? And he said, very rarely, but social media is our best friend and that's how people are found instead. And so there's some middle ground, but you can't, like, we cannot diminish somebody's disappearance. We have to still find them. We got to figure out these tools. And so is that the state sending out that alert, or is that us doing the statewide alert and that cell phone piece coming from locals? I do not know the right answer. I'm looking to everybody to help me find that so that we can get to the best place possible for this, because we have to find people if we can, quickly and alive is the best case scenario. We run into a lot of issues with not just this last feather alert with Miss White, but many of our cases where somebody's on foot, where we put one out and the overwhelming response, which we totally understand of people going to the scene and searching, it makes it so difficult for our tracking teams to sort through footprints and things like that, which we hear from local responders and search and rescue folks is this made it way harder because now everybody's coming. We want them to be here. We need their help, but that organization part of how to tell people how to help, which is part of this task force, I think, too. So it's such a balancing act that Steve and I wish we had the answers to, and we don't. And so it's these continued conversations and trying to learn and what is the best way to do it for specific parts of the state, which are also different, even though North Dakota is a small place. There's not a lot of people that live here. Also, thank goodness that we have harsh winters. I guess we love it that way, but we have to figure out what that looks like, and it might be very well different for different parts of the state. So
just for clarification, the state of North Dakota has the capacity and the capability to do a geofence alert.
we do that for all silver alerts. Very rarely would we put one out statewide. We put it out in specific areas. Amber alert is always statewide. If we had an abduction in a feather alert or an MEP alert, that would always be statewide. And so it's this sort of case comparison that we do. And then by century code right now, it's in abduction cases is the statewide on a cell phone, but the rest of the alert is always used if it's not
And
an
I'm
abduction.
specifically asking the geofence for Spirit Lake to do that last time, because what I'm hearing is either way an alert is going to go out. It's your phone doesn't know the difference. You're not looking at the difference of a local alert or a state alert. They're both happening. I'm not looking if this is the state. So one side I'm hearing is we want to use the local and we'll teach them how to do this. We'll do that. We'll do this. But then I'm also hearing, but the local doesn't have the capability or the staff to do this, and tribes have 2 people. So, and then the other side of it, I'm on the other side of this, I'm hearing the state has it. The state has geofencing. They could have did the feather alert this last time, specifically around the 2 counties or however that works, however they're able to do that. So I'm asking, can the state if we were to go back in time, could the state have sent out a feather alert with the geofence around Spirit Lake Nation?
So by century code, no, because that wireless emergency blast is the second piece of your bill, and the wireless emergency piece, that second part, that's what the cell phone blast piece is. So by century code, no. The capability is there, but the law is wireless emergency blast for abductions in feather and MEP.
That is for statewide
Yes,
abduction.
and geofencing. It's the exact same thing.
Okay, well, we're gonna need to fix that this next session because the geofencing does need to go out. You guys just said it. There needs to be more, and when you're local, you're gonna answer that phone because it's your people. You're gonna look because it's your people. You just said that. And again, people, I wrote it down, there's no such thing as over, I can't remember what you said, I wrote it down, but too many people being aware of this, thank you. So that's what I'm getting at. It was my understanding, because never did it come up in our discussions during legislative session, that we would have to rely on local code reds and weather notifications. If I'm wrong, please correct me.
I have it in my testimony, and I did talk about it. I know we talked about it in some meetings.
As an option. But never, we were talking about geofencing. But that's beside the point. I'm glad that we
Yep.
have this out now. And that's all I want is the
Yeah,
truth of
absolutely.
like, what do we have here?
Yes.
And so now I know we are not allowed to have a feather alert specific for small areas. The only way a feather alert is going to go out is across North Dakota.
No, we put out the feather alert in both cases. The
But on
feather
the
alert
phone
with
is
the-
what I'm talking about.
Okay, so the wireless emergency blast
Yep.
in the second part of that bill is in abduction cases.
Only. And
Only
that's the only time you're going to get it on your phone.
by the state, but the locals have the ability to do it whenever they want, which is a force multiplier. That's a bonus system that is always able to use. Like, we could put one out, Steve and I could say yes to one, say it is an abduction, so we would put out that cell phone piece. The locals could say, we want to do another one. It would come across looking the exact same way. Nobody would know who it came from because it's delivered the same way. And I understand what Dawn said, and in her area, I do believe that probably to be true, but what we know from the state and from learning from other states from good data is that we know there is over alerting when you talk about a statewide system. And when we're talking about the raw numbers of things, your efficiency rate goes down very quickly to at least 50, if not lower. And then you can put actual people and numbers that will not be found because the alert system isn't as effective anymore. And that's where we struggle because it's not as effective anymore because so many people have shut it off. So now that's at least 5+ people in North Dakota, if we conservatively say half, that are no longer served because the alert went out because people aren't seeing it anymore. That's tough to swallow. And so it's worrisome because if you let the cat out of the bag, you can't put it back in. But that doesn't mean that North Dakota isn't just a unicorn and different in that way, but we're cautious because all of these other states are saying, just watch out because it's not going to work anymore and show us the numbers. And so it is worrisome, but I totally understand that it can be different in different areas too. And so I believe what Donna's saying in her area.
So I agree with that, and I'm not trying, this is not personal, believe me.
Yeah.
This is
Yep,
just
definitely. No, I appreciate that.
policies
This is great.
And the procedures that happen, we got to figure this out because what you just said, yes, it is worrisome, but we lost a life.
I know, yes. That's why
because we didn't get the goddamn alert. I'm sorry, but 16 minutes she was on 911. 16 minutes. I'm not privy to the awfuls that you see every day, and I'll pray for you continuing going forward. But listening to that and seeing that, obviously it sticks with me. And I appreciate the work that everybody does, but 16 minutes and we had an alert. That's what this was created for. And to have a county say, well, and maybe they do, but they just don't have the people there. And maybe the tribe does, but they just don't have the people there. So the fact that, and it just infuriates me, I'm sorry, but the fact that we created this feather alert, we have the capability to geofence, but the policy, when we were fighting for it and fighting for that, and it was left out because it was our understanding that we would have that geofence, and we don't now. So we created a feather alert for an abduction that we know is not not a big issue in Indian country right now. It is, don't get me wrong, it's out there, but what we're fighting for is what happened last week or a couple weeks ago. That's what we're here for. And the fact that we're so close, I'm sorry, but I just really needed to get to that point of saying, we don't have a feather alert of how we all expected it to be and understood it to be. So what a recommendation that I have going forward of the communication, I would really like to see these, yes, the sheriffs, the local Lake region saying, yes, this is how it's going to go out. It's not going to go out as a weather alert. It's not going to go out as Life 360 only if you opt in, let's get on that. Because it can happen tomorrow, it can happen, in an hour or whatever. And I love that we're talking about iPods and stuff, but that's a long-term goal. I feel like my worry is like, what are we doing now? What are we going to leave here and do? So we can notify when somebody's on a phone for 16 minutes and doesn't get the response that everybody should get. So that's where I'm at with this. And again, nothing personal, but the policy is there. What can we do to change it? And what can we leave here to take action on? So thank you.
I have a quick comment. So in actually reading some of the information, the actual North Dakota Century Code, and then looking at the feather alert that's on the NDresponse.gov, it states feather alert activation criteria. The following criteria must be defined as defined in Century Code. 1, the missing or abducted individual is Indigenous. 2, the missing or abducted adult is 18 years of age or older. 3, the missing or abducted person is believed to be in grave danger or serious bodily harm or death. 3, there is a descriptive information about the adult and or abductor and or the suspect's vehicle to assist with the safe recovery of the victim and or apprehension of the suspect. 5, there is enough usable information to believe an immediate broadcast will provide in the public with descriptive information to help locate the adult suspect and the suspect's vehicle. But when you read the actual chapter 54 of the North Dakota Century Code and you look at the definition of the feather alert, it says 54-6701 definition 3, feather alert notice means an urgent bulletin using the emergency alert system to air a description of an Indigenous individual who has been abducted or is believed to be at imminent risk of seriously bodily injury or death. So you're citing missing and then you're saying or abducted, but yet when you do the alert notice in the second part of it, it just relates just to being abducted. So what is your definition of missing?
I'm sorry, I'm trying my
I
best to
love
describe
tripping
this.
people up. That's my job.
No, I love it. I love this. I'm like,
I mean,
I sincerely,
define it.
yes, I sincerely appreciate all of this. I am trying to figure out a different way to explain it, so I'll let Steve
Give me
try.
a shot.
Yeah.
I'll take a shot. Steve Harstead, BCI. The feather alert is an alert system using the emergency alert system. That's what that says. That emergency alert system is not the cell phone blast. The cell phone blast is a very specific portion of an alerting system in our alerts. We call it the WIA, the wireless emergency alert. It gets very confusing when you start putting all of these things together, and we understand that. We're trying to, but a feather alert can go out without ever sending the cell phone blast, and that is
What does it go out on?
social media, news, radio. That's how the weather service picks it up, and that's how it went out on a weather alert. So the weather service picks it up and they push it out on all of those things we consider to be bonus alerts. The more information out there, the better, right? So if the weather service puts it out, the information is out. It sounds like a good whatever. If somebody gets weather alerts, but they don't get their cell phone blast alert, then great, we'll get them one way or another. So it's a little confusing. The way the current Century Code is written is we send a feather alert out on social media, news, some of the other platforms like that, websites, all of all of these ways, but not on the wireless emergency alert blast or yep. So that unless there's an abduction. And it's the exact same way for the MEP alert, which is the missing endangered persons alert. They're identical code other than the Indigenous language. So does that help a little bit? We did send a feather alert. A feather alert went out,
It does,
but it wasn't the
do you
cell
know
phone alert.
how isolated and our reservations are? Like, literally, we could have somebody that could be abducted because if we're so vast and open prairie on very many of our reservations that unless you see it actually happen, we could never know. So I think just in general, when any Indigenous person, and I get the over people will shut it off and all of this, but I mean, just thinking at the geographical location of our reservations is because they're so vast, the openness, not everybody's going to be able to witness. Like if you have someone go, a kid, blonde hair, blue eyed little girl go missing from the Kirkwood Bar parking lot or at the actual mall, it's like apples to oranges. So it's frustrating because of the vastness of our reservations.
Good. I don't disagree with that. And one of those same reasons is why we encourage the local response. And so one of the other things that I've heard several times and again, trying not to be callous, but we've talked about the 16 minutes. She was on the phone for 16 minutes. if you call Bismarck and you want Bismarck and the state of North Dakota to put out an alert, you're asking for 10 people to get on a Teams call, and I could be somewhere else. I could be, I gotta wait for Jenna to be on the call. Both of us have to give authorization for the actual message to go out. We have two people that write it. We have somebody that puts the website together. We have a emergency service guy that's operating like his group to make sure everything is working right. Again, we want to find everybody, but a local response is going to be faster than what the state of North Dakota can put together, because we have these, for the lack of a better term, bureaucratic problems that we have to get through in order to get everybody there and to get the message sent out. It regularly takes us 45 minutes to an hour to get everybody together and to get all of this done before we can push a message out. And that's if we have good information, we have the information in front of us, we have a picture that we have to, because we have to get that so that we can push that out with social media. We have to do all of these things in order to get that out. That's our best response. The best response you're gonna get from the state of North Dakota is within an hour, maybe.
But on our reservation, if a cell phone blast was to have gone out, we got Bismarck to the north of us. If we're looking at the centrally located Fort Yates, then we have, of course, South Dakota. So depending on which way they go, they could already be up in a whole different geographical area on the interstate, going towards Fargo, going towards Dickinson, prior to anything even getting out. So, I mean, it's not like they're gonna stay and reside there.
We sincerely appreciate all this because it helps us understand more and make better decisions and continue to ask questions and involve more people in the conversation. So please know that we don't take any of this lightly, and we always report back to our big group that does this. And when Steve explains all the people involved, it sounds bureaucratic, but it also does make it faster because we have an IT person online who can do that way faster than Steve can use a single finger to type on his keyboard. I give you grief. But there's a lot of people involved, but that helps us do it way faster. We used to respond in person and then do it. Now we jump in online. Thank you, COVID, and are able to put these together as fast as possible. But yeah, our goal is 30 minutes, but that's if we have all the information from the agency we need. And typically they're doing an investigation first, then they submit the alert. So it's usually 2 to 3 hours after the person went missing because that local response piece is happening. I don't know at any time we've received one before. Quite a few hours have passed because they're doing the investigative work on the ground first. If that makes sense or creates more questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you, Jenna. I appreciate it. Mr. Dakota, please.
Hello, James Dakota, Turtle Mountain, Band of Chippewa. So I just wanted to go back to identifying some strategy that, may be helpful to all of us. And I want to talk about the Turtle Mountain MMIP chapter. So at first it was a lot of just beating on a door, and it was like nobody was listening to us. So we decided to go to our tribal council and first get recognition through our tribal council that we were an actual chapter that was recognized by our tribal council. Second, we have individuals on our MMIP chapter that are key individuals. We have a police officer. We have Representative Davis. We have myself that I'm right next to the chairman of our tribe. We also have the fire chief, and all of these individuals are on our MMIP chapter. We also have Border Patrol that is on our MMIP chapter, and they're helping us to become an incident response team by getting certified. And I think that would help a lot with our communication. And, I'm sure that even if the BCI or the Highway Patrol wanted to be a part of our chapter, that would make that would make it even more streamlined and faster. So I could bring that up at our next meeting, and if you guys would like to partake, that would only make it stronger, it would make it easier, it would make the information flow. So that's just identification and a recommendation from the Turtle Mountain MMIP chapter. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Chairwoman.
So my question is, what's the, and I might have missed it, but what's the difference in determining a missing person versus an abduction?
So each of these cases always stays with the investigating agency, and so they would determine that at that level, and we take their word for it. We ask qualifying questions because if we can always push one into being a more serious incident, so we can respond appropriately, we will. If it's in gray area, we will. But the investigation always stays with the local agency, and then I would say almost 0% of the time do people call in with a full investigation done, because we ask them to report it as soon as possible so we can get started and kick it out as soon as possible. So we'll always help them through that, but it would always stay with them. So in the years past, Dawn submitted alerts and she would keep investigation, but I would just go through our questionnaire and then we would kick it out on her behalf.
And so through your iPause system, Don, to have a, sorry. Pardon me? Lana Street. The other comment I want to make is, we've been able, since we've developed our own emergency response system for missing persons, we've been able to make the call ourselves, I guess, when it comes to determining if whether we feel they've been abducted or they're missing. And so we've kind of taken the path that, because of the high percentage of our people that go missing in this country, we've taken it upon ourselves to treat everybody as an abducted person and send out those notices because, we need that immediate response. And so I guess that would be, my ask of the state is, can you see, the value in our person as, we do on our own homelands and our own home front when it comes to trying to react to our missing persons, as an abducted person, because like you read, statistics show, Native Americans go missing, at a higher percentage than any other race.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there's any, you can take any consideration of that. But I had a question for Don. So how do you, when you send out your notices through your iPause, who makes that determination? Is that?
We have educated, like I said, I have my own division to work with. I can make that decision if I need to, if the investigation was brought to me. But most of the time it falls back onto the primary law enforcement agency. That is going to be the chief, the captain, the lieutenants, or one of the shift supervisors that is on scene making that decision. Then it would go side by side working with the incident commander. They would sit there, like for us on MHA, that would be Emily Sitting Bear working with the chief or with anybody who's sergeant and above, and getting that information in real time, quickly as possible. We've had iPause alerts that went out within 30 minutes of the reporting to an hour of the reporting, just because of coordinating, having that communication. But your incident commander and your chief should always be tandem together, and getting, so that they get those real-time information. And that's again, communication is the key right here. And